And I'm delighted you could join us, and in such numbers too. I think rumours of the party's demise are greatly exaggerated. We can confound the naysayers, and well, one of the gentlemen who is seeking the party leadership has unfortunately been unable to join us due to a few logistical problems. So it's oft remarked by our detractors, but I'm afraid to concede that tonight we are officially brainless. Richard will not be attending, although he sends his regards. Ben Walker has recently become a father for, again, the fifth time. Quite a feat.
Fifth time he knows about.
Indeed. But
Terrifying.
so accordingly, his paternal duties have dictated that he too cannot join us tonight. In his stead, Gareth Walker, Gareth Bennett. My apologies, Gareth. Has
unless he's son number 6.
I think I'm older than Ben, actually.
Oh, don't be so old-fashioned about these things.
Well, enough of my pontificating. Well, yes, I was actually going to use if you'll permit it, a cricketing analogy in the month that England and Wales were crowned world champions, albeit captained by a Dubliner, worth noting. We are hoping that tonight everyone will play with a straight bat. That will not mean that you cannot bowl a few good glees. And tonight's umpire is our regional spokesman, Mr. Robert Hill. Thank you. Show your appreciation. And he certainly stands for no nonsense. So we're in very capable hands. And I'll let you do your stuff.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Well, thanks again for everyone for turning up. And we're going to start off with a 2-minute opener from each candidate or representative. Freddie, would you like to kick off?
Thank you.
You're starting for 10.
Started for 10. Hi, friends. I'm Freddie. I'm the regional chairman for UKIP in London. I've worked for and around UKIP for about 8 years, over 5 of them within UKIP. I'm a fighter. I know that UKIP's battle is an important one. My technique is both scientific and academic, as well as a bruiser and as a street fighter, the person who puts the fear of the Almighty into the mainstream media, who do not want to touch me, and they're being quite logical here. I regret we are where we are, but as politicians do say, nonetheless, we are there. We need to get out of it. We need to be politically relevant. We are not a street fighting mob. If we are a street fighting mob, we are finished. We're at 0% in the YouGov polls. That means below 0.5%. This is outrageous. We're a party who tells the truth. We've done nothing but tell the truth. We have fought for the right things and for the right reasons. We are the thin purple line separating us from, I don't know what. If we could only rely and trust the Brexit party to do what it says in the box. But that would be flying in the face of a great deal of evidence from the past as to what is happening and what will happen. So we are needed. We can't do compromises or deals with anyone. I am a man of few words, well chosen. There's never an extra one. Stuart Agnew, MEP, very beloved former member of European Parliament for UKIP, has written the stuff in yellow, and that's his stuff. There follows a brief CV by me, and I have clearly got something which approximates a sense of humour. However, it's only us who are going to be able to do this fight. Therefore, please choose wisely. Choose somebody who can convince, can argue rationally, but also has the emotion to deal with this matter as it should be, because we are really fighting for things which are here. I have degrees in a number of things, physics, mathematics, accounting qualifications, and so on, trained with Ernst & Young, blah, 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 blah. But that's not why you should vote for me as leader. You should vote for me as leader because of things you can't see and which are not in that CV. When I was driving to the very first hustings, I was trying to do some important fundraising with a fundraiser who didn't want to touch UKIP currently because we are toxic. He said, not my view, his words. Driving through, it meant I arrived at Tiverton slightly late, but I had the benefits of driving through Somerset just as the sun was setting, and it was setting sort of through the trees. And I had to pull over my car and for just a few seconds, and because I was crying, and it reminded me, I'm from Londonistan. We've lost there. It's over. The battle is really over in London. We've got memories on our side, but the London which my grandma survived the Blitz in, and my mum too, and where my grandfather perished in with only a week and a couple of days before VE Day, because he wouldn't go to hospital because he said they were for our lads. That's gone. London's gone. But looking at Somerset as it was then, with the sun through the trees, I really thought, this is reminding me as well, we have this to fight. There's no one else to do this fighting. It's only us. Please trust me and vote for me as leader. I know what needs to be done. Give me the tools, I'll finish the job. You can have Churchill quotes from me all through the day, if you want, day and night. But on this one, I wish I could say I had more to offer you than blood, tears, toil, and what I'm already feeling, sweat. But I have none, because I can't guarantee you we can get out of this. We shouldn't be in this place. We've got in this place because sensible people have not been sensible. People who are good at heart have just allowed themselves to have their ears tickled, and we've gone badly wrong. So, thank you for listening. Please support me as the next leader of UKIP. I know what needs to be done. Thank you. The brief CV is here.
Okay, thank you.
The roller skating was simply put in to provoke people who are called brain as opposed to brains.
Okay, Gareth.
Thanks, thanks, Robert, and thanks everyone for coming this evening, and thanks for the time that you've invested in UKIP and the faith that you've shown in UKIP as a political party. It's good that we still are getting well-attended meetings here in Northern Ireland, and it does give some hope for the future. Obviously, the party is not in a good state, as has been evidenced by recent elections, in which we've polled very poorly, and it's been a very poor return for the good effort that's been put in by people like yourselves. Obviously, you had the local elections here in Northern Ireland recently, where I know a hell of a lot of effort was put into it. But unfortunately, due largely to the party's standing nationally, there was a very poor return for the efforts that were put in. So we do have to change that. Now, of course, I'm not the candidate. Robert and Paul have agreed that I can stand in for Ben Walker today, and I can make a case for Ben. Ben apologises that he wasn't able to make it. He has his partner has recently had a baby. So it was difficult for him to come over to Northern Ireland. This is the only one, the Hustings, that he hasn't made. But I apologise that he couldn't make it. But I'm standing in for him. So I'm slightly more limited in what I can say than the other candidates, because I'm not the candidate. But I do know Ben. I've been on the NEC with him for the past year. He's very much the grassroots candidate. He wants the party to invest in building up local branches, so that we can compete again at local level and start to try and win local elections, and that's the way forward for the party. We can't carry on being a top-down party with the MEPs at the top and everything else neglected. The MEPs have gone, there is no top echelon of the party left really, so we have to focus on the grassroots. We have to develop policies where the grassroots are having an input into those policies. Ben wants a live manifesto so we can transparently see where the policy ideas are coming from. He wants to set up a policy unit which will be professionally run and organised, where we can cost research those policies, market test them through focus groups possibly, and we can come up with sensible policies which will resonate with the wider electorate and will allow us to compete again at elections starting off at local level. So he's very much the grassroots candidate. He founded the branch in South Gloucestershire near Bristol. He's the branch chairman. He's been a local councillor. He's been on a town council. He's been on a district council. So he does know what it's like to work at the grassroots level of politics. That's very much what he represents. He's also ex-Royal Navy. So he's very mindful of the need to provide an effective covenant for former serving forces people. He's very interested in the issue of servicemen being prosecuted for alleged crimes. This has to stop. There has to be a covenant whereby people who serve in the British forces are protected from future actions, often by ambulance chasing lawyers. So he's very mindful of that. He wants to prioritise the need for veterans in things like housing and provision of jobs. And I'm not sure what else I can say. There will be many other things that arise tonight. I don't want to make definitive statements on policies. The main thing about policies are that we need an input into the policies. We have to see where the policies are coming from. We need party democracy, so we need the people at the bottom, the ordinary party members, to have a say in those policies and to develop those policies. And this is what we need to do. We need to go from being a top-down party to being a genuine bottom-up party with a focus on the grassroots.
Thank you, Gareth. Mike?
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to come to Belfast. Last time I came here and spoke to you, the hangover only lasted for 3 days. But it's always a pleasure. You people, you're the membership. You're going to be asked two things: who your new leader should be and which direction this party should go. We can carry on where we've been going for the last 18 months. 0% in the polls. No, the local council's an absolute disaster, a loss of 24 MEPs, or we can change direction and start becoming a winning party again. We can start talking about policies. We can start going out there on the street, talking to people and listening to what they're saying and talking about policies. I'm also advocating that we start, just as the Lib Dems did, start from the ground upwards, start winning council seats again. Start using that as a base to be an electoral threat once again in this country. Get ourselves out there and start campaigning. You will see in the document that we've put out there the structure that I want this party. It has to be restructured, complete restructure of the party. There is a policy development unit in there. There is a party board. But my main thing, which I fought for over 10 years, is regional representation. Because that has never happened. We won that in Doncaster Conference. We won the right to have regional representation. And that was dropped by Steve Crowther, who was a party chair at the time. We have to have that regional representation because we have to have information that comes from the membership up to the top and from the top down to the membership. And that's the only way you're going to do that. So I want to see regional representation. I want to see this party winning local council seats. And myself, I've held every senior position within this party. I've started off as an ordinary member. I worked my way through to a regional chair, regional organiser. I became an MEP. I was head of delegation in Brussels. I was the party whip, and I was a deputy leader. So I've seen it all from within the tent. The other candidates and everybody else see it from outside the tent. They say this happened, that happened, and I say no. I was there when it happened. I can tell you exactly what happened. So I speak from within the tent. I can make this party once again an electoral threat. I need your support, because when we do this, when I become the leader, this is not going to be just me. It has to be you people that get behind me and become a team. And there's no I in team. You have to support me, and we have to drive this through. This party can have a successful future. The Brexit party will collapse. The final nail in the coffin was Boris Johnson. That is a scam by Farage. That will collapse. We have to be a party that all of those people have to come back to and have a home to come back to, and they will only come back if they see us an electoral threat and see us with common sense policies that people will follow. And the ordinary man out there in the street, man and woman, and I am working class, and I'm proud to say that, speak about the jobs, the kids' school, the NHS, the GPs, the things that matter to them. This is what we've got to start talking about. We've got to get back talking about these things. And what I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to beg you people to change direction. Let's start winning again. I'm not a loser, I'm a winner. And I want to win. And I want this party to win. And I put so much effort over the last 11 years to see this party crash and burn because of the direction we've been going in. We have to win again. And I believe we can do that.
Okay, thank you, folks. Let's see, lift this over here. And we'll start going through some of the written questions here. If I could ask you to try and keep your answers to about a minute. And if you hear the bell, just try and finish up wherever you are, okay? The first question I have is, what will be your top priorities in your first 100 days as UKIP leader? Mike, do you want to start this?
Yeah, absolutely. I've just spoken about it. First thing I will do is to restructure the party, to make sure it is a party that is listening to the membership. We have to start doing that. This party has got to be restructured. Look at the constitution, look at the structure of the party, and really get to grips with it. I've already had a word with Kes and Harriet, who was a party chair at the moment. I said, if I win this, I don't want no ifs, no buts. When I come in, I'm going to come in and get a grip of the NEC and get a grip of the structure of this party. And she said, well, if that's happened, she said she'll support me on this. It has to happen. We cannot just carry on as we've been going on. We've got to restructure, and that will be one of my first priorities. Second priorities is to start looking at policy and make sure we've got the policy document that people can support and can follow. You know, because it could happen, and I don't think it will happen, but it could be right round the corner where we're going into a general election. If Boris pushes it that way, we could be going for a general election. Financially, we're going to struggle on that, but we have to be, ready and say, well, okay, let's go for it. Let's target seats rather than the scattergun effect. Let's target the seats that we think we can win. But we've got to be a party that is an electoral threat, that has the policies that will get us that seat. And that is the only way. The power in this country is in Westminster. That is where we have to be. We have to get seats into Westminster. But as I said before, we have to start, if we've got the time, start at council level. Start winning council seats.
Gareth?
Thanks, Robert. I think, first of all, we need to assess our financial resources, and we need to make sure the party is on a sound financial footing. We do need to develop income streams. There are ideas that Mark Harland, the Treasurer, has been pushing about developing the UKIP shop, which might be a more profitable source of income. But obviously we need donors. There has been a lack of donors over the last few months. Given the direction of the party, a lot of them have been put off. So we need to go back to donors that have supported UKIP in the past. We need to try to get those streams of income coming in. We need an audit of the party members and the talents of the party members, because often these have been overlooked. The spokespeople have tended to be whoever has been at the top of the party, primarily the MEPs. So we don't have the MEPs anymore. We need to find out who is good at what. We need people to come forward who have specialist knowledge. We need to form policy groups. Some of those people can be spokesmen for the party. People who are good at presenting stuff, interviews and things like that could be spokespeople as well, if they are given the briefings by the policy groups who are expert in those areas. So we do need to assess what resources we've got financially and in terms of the people, because the strength of the party is the people who are in the party and the people who are active in that party. And I think those are the things we need to look at. A live manifesto is another thing Ben Walker is very interested in, so that we do have a manifesto that's being fed into by members' suggestions. Obviously we need to research and properly cost those policies, but people can then see what the policies are on a live manifesto, and the policies can change as the policy groups feed into it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Gareth.
In fact, the answer given by Gareth is very correct, and it's largely coincides with what I would have said. There are twin priorities. One is finance. I am myself a qualified accountant. I'm aware of some of the issues involved here, and we're on the horns of a dilemma. Assume I agree with everything that Gareth has just said. The dilemma is this: the large potential donors are the ones we need. Sadly, this is just a fact. These large donors, sometimes we have to be very careful with them. Some of them have an agenda, which is not our agenda. We cannot allow ourselves to be compromised in this way. It's a dangerous, slippery path. I take the grounds of moral and ethical superiority. I do not want to concede one tiny millimetre on that one. There's no compromise on it. Some of these donors cannot be allowed in. Some of the others are very concerned. We have problems with the Electoral Commission and electoral law, the Political Parties Elections and Referendums Act of 2000, PEPERA. It says there has to be complete transparency as to where the money is really coming from. I mean, really coming from. Otherwise, we can do all sorts of accountants' tricks with trust funds and all sorts of other shady stuff which UKIP wouldn't want to do. And in this case, we couldn't even do, even if we wanted to do, because it'd be ineffective. And these donors, the sort of donors we want, are the sort of donors who currently do not view UKIP as safe for their own reputations, thanks to the nonsense that's been going on in our party, not just for the last 18 months, it goes back further than that. It goes back roughly to the referendum, to be honest, and a few months after the referendum, that glorious moment when we felt we were going to win it, and then we did win it. And despite all the other scoundrels and blackguards who did their best and cheated in every way and so on and so forth. All that is fact. I have a few of them. These are potential donors in mind. They are city people who are good and honest, and they do believe that they are somewhat centre-right. The other thing is to give you spirit, though. To give you spirit that there's somebody out there the mainstream media is terrified of, and that person is me. The person who the last person who Nigel wants to be the leader of UKIP is standing here. That's in the opinion of Stuart Agnew. Penultimate lines on that CV. Thank you.
Okay, second question. Members have felt ignored by some leaders in the past. You have all been here for the good and the bad. What changes will you make that will ensure members are kept in the loop and included? Gareth, do you want to take that this time?
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Yes, there has been this problem in the past where members have felt out of the loop. I've touched on this in a couple of the answers I've given. So we do need to focus on the members. We don't have the fig leaf of the MEPs to hide behind anymore, because obviously every 5 years there was a European election, and we did pretty well in the European elections. They were fought under proportional representation. Europe was our issue. Unfortunately, that's gone. So that is a fig leaf that's disappeared, and we are struggling to compete at local election level. So we do need to build up branches. Now, we do ultimately seek to get representation at Westminster, but historically parties have never won seats at Westminster unless they've got councillors first. So we aren't doing very well at local government level. We need to start winning local elections first before we can realistically aspire to get MPs. So unfortunately, it is going to be a long, hard road if we're going to get to parliamentary representation. It's not going to happen overnight. It's to do with building up branches, and it's to do with the central party giving support to local branches. Local branches will know what the local issues are, but there are also national issues. If leaflets are going out, I think that these need to be checked nationally to ensure that there is certain uniformity and that there aren't mistakes and things that could be to the detriment of the party. But the local people will know what the local issues are. They should also form part of the leaflets that go out. So you could have one side of the leaflet is your local issues, the other side of the leaflet is the national issues. But certainly the central party, the national party, needs to be offering much more support to the grassroots. That is exactly the scenario that Ben Walker has focused on. This is the main plank of his campaign, that he wants to empower the grassroots members. He wants them to come forward. He wants them to submit their CVs if they're interested in having a role in developing policies, and we do want to empower the grassroots of the party.
I've been regional chair, I've been regional organiser. The regional chair minutes never went to the regional organiser minutes, and the regional organiser minutes never went to regional chair. The NEC never knew what anybody was doing, and the branches said, what happened in the regional chair meeting? And they said, well, the branch, the party chair told us we can't tell you. This is how it's been for too long. This is why I'm saying we have to start getting regional representation. We have to start passing that information from the membership to the top, and from the top down to the membership. And Gareth's spoken about this, about winning elections. And yes, we have to win local elections, and we can do that by getting the talent that is in this party. And there is a lot of talent in the party, and getting them out as spokesmen. We can start winning council seats again to build ourselves up and get us into a position where we can start winning Westminster seats. And on the issue of funding by the donors have all gone. Nobody puts money on the three-legged donkey. Unless we start winning council seats and start winning elections once again, the donors are never going to come back. So forget it. We have to start winning again. And it's all about bringing your people on, getting your people out there, knocking on doors, canvassing, getting that message out there, standing on the street and telling the British public that we are still here. Because time and time again they all said, UKIP, I thought you'd gone a long while ago. We are still here, and we have to get the message out there. These are our policies. They are common sense policies. We want you to vote for us, and we will start winning once again.
The question related to mistakes made by last leaders, and we only look at the past for the purpose of not repeating its mistakes. That serves no other purpose, otherwise recriminations lead nowhere. Many of the weaker leaders have had weak egos and have therefore tried to impose their will overly on people. That is the normal reaction of people with weak egos, and I'm afraid that started with Nigel. They've all had this, and this is just not me. I have a super strong ego, and I listen to everyone. Therefore, I don't feel threatened when somebody tells me, "Shut up, you're talking nonsense." I listen because even if I end up disagreeing with them, there's often something to learn from it. I'm probably doing some part of it, less well than otherwise. So, in terms of style, I'm actually answering the question that was asked, as opposed to making a political speech about it. About how to get us out of this mess, we all know this. We have to work at a grassroots level, that goes without saying, but we also have to win the air war, and the air war is in the mainstream media. It's also in social media, where I have recently recorded a one-on-one Freddie versus Carl Benjamin. You know, the gentleman who complained there wasn't enough beer, so he wouldn't be able to be forced into raping a Labour MP. This is not UKIP. This is just nonsense. This is bad taste. And it's said recently. I've taken him on head to head, and he has apologised. And that apology is going to be broadcast. Otherwise, as I said, under my leadership, he can forget having any position within UKIP, let alone some important one, let alone being an important spokesman. He can leave the party if he didn't want to do this. He has actually done this, and hopefully will stick to it. We can't have these ghosts from the past hanging around. And here, I'm afraid, there's probably no difference between our three candidates here, including myself. We don't want Gerard's face all over the place, because the media will not let us go. This is not because Gerard is a bad person. This is because the media have portrayed him successfully to a public who by and large are less sceptical than we are about how much truth is there on Sky, in the BBC, in the Groniad, etc. We know they're a pack of lies. We know they're liars and cowards. But the public doesn't know it, and perception is reality. We have to draw a line with the past and say, that's it. And if you want to talk about Hitler saluting dogs, you want to talk about calling people who got Down syndrome retards, it's got nothing to do with UKIP. Those people are nothing to do with us. It's not going to happen again. We want to talk about important policies, which are crime, immigration, the NHS, all these other things which are linked together, the things which Nigel and his Brexit party will not dare to talk about, the connections which he cannot make, because he can't walk on water as well as I can. I know better than he does where the stones are. I will take on the linkages between all these things and take it on fearlessly in the media, and God help them they try to beat me on it, because that'll just give me even more opportunity to prove that I'm right. When you have to time your phone calls to the second after 8:30 to get a chance of seeing the doctor that day, and it's not because of the native population birth rate, you know that something's gone wrong. They won't touch it. We will. We'll reclaim the ground, and we've got truth on our side, and never underestimate the power of truth. That does eventually win. There will be hard times along the way. Thank you.
Okay. We've had electoral success in the past here, and we've launched policies in the recent past. Unfortunately, we don't have elected representation locally at this time. What will you do to attract voters back and help the party become an electoral threat again? Will Northern Ireland be a priority during your leadership? Now, I know you've already answered some of that, but this is more specifically, I think, about Northern Ireland. Will it be a priority? So,
Yeah. I am not an expert on Northern Ireland. I'm not an expert on Scotland, and I'm not an expert on Wales. As leader, I would put together what I would call a cabinet for each of those areas, and I would ask those people living in those areas that has the knowledge and the skills and the expertise to form the policies. So it'd be like a local policy document from you people, because you actually live here. You're the people that know what goes on. And I think that's the only way that this can happen. It's no good me sitting over in Yorkshire telling you people what the policies are and what's important out there. I would be listening to you and saying, what is important? What are the people talking about? What policy do they want? Let's get a document together, let's put it out there, and let's put those policy documents out, get them out onto the streets. So I will be listening to you people.
Thank you.
At last we have a slight disagreement. We actually have an excellent manifesto already. Here's the interim version. There's really nothing wrong with it. There's a few bits of tweaking. Because it's Gerard was responsible, the word Islam occurs rather more often than it needs to. We just have to bang on about one law for all and not allowing anyone any exceptions. We've got perfectly adequate laws to deal with paedophiles, rapists, idiots, morons who think they can impose their will on us, people who think women are second-class citizens, all of this stuff. We've got laws to deal with them already. We don't need to make a huge issue of bringing in new ones against them. Just make sure our existing laws are actually enforced by a police force that is entirely corrupted from the top down. There are a few good bobbies and sergeants still left, but they are a dying breed. Right from the top, where the chief constables are common purpose infiltrated. Common purpose being a semi-Marxist, disgraceful organisation which is designed to subvert the will of the people. But we have a good manifesto already. We don't need to reinvent it. We need to get it out there and get believed. And this won't happen while we still have the media whacking onto us about silly things said by people who shouldn't have been in a position to say it, and banging on, putting up ridiculous demonstrations outside buildings in London. The only building we should be demonstrating outside is Parliament, not various courts and so on. They may be important, but they're not central to what UKIP is about. We're not a street protest movement. We're a street protest movement. We'll remain at 0 or 1%. I want us to get out of that, and we'll do it by promoting an excellent manifesto, which I commend to you. It is largely similar to our 2015 one. It is a good one, and there's nothing in it that's wrong. We push it out there, we get the message out there, and we start to win. Thank you.
How to help the party to become an electoral threat. We've looked at this a little bit in some of the previous answers, professionalising the party and so on, particularly in Northern Ireland. Well, I think parties need a USP, a unique selling point. Ours was Brexit. That issue is something that may not be of great benefit to us politically and electorally now, so we need to think of what our USP is. Well, in Northern Ireland, we do have the devolution policy, which I helped to develop. I had a lot of help from people over here. Paul, in particular, was very enthusiastic when I became the leader of the UKIP group in the Welsh Assembly, because one of my central policy planks was scepticism about the devolved assemblies, and we want to have a look at this, see if this works. Clearly, in Northern Ireland, you have a massive demonstration that devolution doesn't work, because you have a Northern Ireland Assembly that hasn't even sat for over 2 years. You have a Northern Ireland Executive that hasn't even done anything for 2 years. They're still being paid. And the curious thing is that in that period, that 2-year period when you haven't had any government in Northern Ireland at that level, you've enjoyed over here the longest period of economic growth and the lowest period of unemployment in the whole post-1999 era, which tells us that these guys in Stormont don't really do anything, and it's of no real value to the elector to have them. It's the same thing in Scotland with the Scottish Parliament, it's the same thing in Wales with the Welsh Assembly, and it's the same thing in London with the London Assembly. We do have to stand on a platform of abolishing politicians where they're not adding any value. We need to look at police and crime commissioners, we need to look at regional mayors and all the other claptrap that they brought in. This is just the political class inventing jobs for themselves, sucking away resources from frontline services such as health, housing and education. That could be part of our mission going forward in UKIP. Ben Walker is very keen on this. He was very helpful when we pushed the anti-devolution policy through the NEC. So he is very supportive of these ideas. They have to be refined. We have to do it in consultation. Regional representation of the NEC, which Mike has talked about, we have to look at this carefully. There is a very good case for all 12 regions of the UK having representation in that room when we have the NEC meetings, by whatever means. So it would be great to have someone from Northern Ireland there at all the meetings, and I would be very supportive of that, and so would Ben.
Thank you. Question 4. Describe an experience or experiences during your time representing UKIP that demonstrates why you have the skills available to take on the considerable flak that comes with being a party leader.
Good question.
Yes, Rennie, go ahead.
Good. Well, I'm made for it, mate. I like a fight, and this is a fight. It's a fight which feeling good is not the objective. Feeling good is not the objective. It's very misleading. It's winning that's the objective. And winning here is winning hearts and minds, not of the people in the room like this, not of people who are as advanced as you, who have joined the dots, but winning the hearts and minds of the people out there. Because, well, I mean, unfortunately, this fine gentleman has taken my natural position, which is far right, apparently. I'm not at all far right. I'm pretty centrist in most things. Economically, I'm far right, because socialism is a mental disease in the elderly. In the young, it could just be forgiven. In the elderly, it is simply some mind problem. But I'm certainly not far right in terms of any of the nasty pejorative senses which they mean. I love taking on the media. I enjoy it. When they've tried me with this Tommy nonsense, which I didn't want anyway, they've tried it 3 times, the BBC, over a 2-month span. Each time they lost badly. I conceded everything about Tommy's past. We're not saying he's some shining example of a fine young manhood or anything like that, but his central plank is right. It was an enormous scandal that in one county alone, 1,400 young girls were sex slaved out, which is worse than gang rape. This is an outrage. It couldn't have happened. And there was collusion at every level, between the police, the CPS, as in Crown Prosecution Service, the Child Protective Services, local councils, MPs, government in all its senses and forms, as well as the judiciary and courts and journalists. And they all kept quiet about who was doing it. So Tommy had got a point. Whatever else is wrong with him, he has a point. We have made the same point. He may be hijacking it for his own ends, but he's centrally right. Does the BBC agree, disagree, or do they not know? Now, they tried each one of those 3 with me, and each one became a cropper, because I took it on the chin, firstly, their attacks on Tommy, and I hit back. They have never phoned me again since then on the matter of Tommy. Now it's switched to Carl Benjamin. But my conversations with the BBC on air were all to do with the licence fee then. In what senses do they think they are responsible, balanced public service broadcaster? Because they're not. They're a propaganda outfit, largely for the Labour Party, which nowadays increasingly means the Conservatives as well, because they're all a bunch of the same thing. And the Brexit Party may well be subsumed into the Conservatives. We've already seen the announcement from Syed Javid. His statement over there was preparatory to the joining in of these 2 parties. It's very clear. It has no other political meaning, saying the Brexit Party is acceptable in advance of a merger. I'll take the battle to them. This is what I have done, and what I continue to do better than anyone else in UKIP to the best of my knowledge, and that is what I can do specially. Further, I just enjoy it, and I consider it a matter of good manners to inform those who are less mentally endowed, to help them out of their errors, and there is no end of these scoundrels within the BBC, Sky, all bits of the Groniad, all the red tops and the black tops, all the ones who unite against us. I enjoy it as well. So this makes me suitable to take on the onerous task of being a leader. All the other expert things, I would employ other experts, and they are sitting here with me to do all these other things, because the job of the leader is to lead. Simple as that.
Mike?
I spent 5 weeks in Calais, in the jungle in Calais. Probably the only politician to do that. Whilst I was there, James and I discovered 20 migrants sitting in a bush. They all jumped up and ran. This is 2 o'clock in the morning, by the way. Ran down the road. James and I chased him, and I said, James, he said, what? I said, why the hell are we chasing these people? I don't know. The BBC Two said that I'd become a vigilante. So they came out and filmed me for 12 hours, wired up with a microphone, trying to trip me up, saying I was a vigilante. So, you know, that's an experience in that alone. Another experience, terrorists blew up the underground in Brussels, right outside my office. At that time, I was the only MEP in the office. It was early hours of the morning, I was there. I spent the next 14 hours speaking on every radio, TV, right across Europe, right across America, right across Great Britain. An incident happened in Strasbourg, where I was accused of striking someone, shall we say. That incident never happened. But when I came back, I spent the full 24 hours defending myself on, again, every channel, every radio, every paper, all trying to trip me up, trying to say I'd hit this guy. My house was surrounded surrounded by vans of every TV company. The wife was followed to the shop, she was followed to her sisters. My two brothers who lived across the other side of the city had their door knocked on. Everybody down my street had a door knocked on, or even with a private number, they'd call them up and they said, how the hell did they get my number? And one guy from Sky said to me, Mike, you've got some bloody good neighbours there. I said, why? He said, because not one of them had give any information. He said, one guy, we knocked on his door and he said, F off. So he said, you've got some bloody good neighbours. That is what I've done for the last 5 years. Spoken to the media. I've been in the thick of it. I've been in the midst of it. And I know I can handle it.
Thanks, Robert. Slightly difficult for me to answer this question because this is personal to the candidate and I'm not the candidate. I think that one aspect that Ben has focused on is that we need to use a lot of talented people that we have, and we do have some very good speakers. We have some people who are very good with the media, and I think that the leadership shouldn't be a one-man band. We need to use several people. We need to use people who are good in specialist areas, but also the way the media works is that you need people in different regions of the UK. So we probably need to have a couple of people who are very good at the media in all the different regions. And we have guys that are standing for the leadership. Hopefully we can utilise all of the talents afterwards in the correct way. So I don't think it's about one person. I think Ben is very good as a front person. He isn't the only one, and he would stress this himself. He would be looking to use a team of people. He would be looking to develop a team of spokespeople and tackling the media in that way. But I should also point out that increasingly in recent months we've had a leader who has been unwilling to do mainstream media interviews, and he's more or less abdicated his role as leader, because I think that you have to take the flak. You have to understand that the mainstream media isn't going to be helpful to UKIP. And you can't just flee the field and decide not to do mainstream media interviews anymore and just give your message through social media, because most people won't get that message. So whoever we have as leader has to be someone who is going to foster links with the mainstream media again and start doing those interviews, which unfortunately Gerard Batten was refusing to do. Things were set up for him by Chris Hicks, his press officer. Chris told me this, and he was refusing to do those interviews. So we have to take a fresh approach, and we have to foster links with the mainstream media, not just through one person, but through a talented team of people.
Okay, I think we'll do one more question here and then we'll take a short break. So, the next leader will have to bring people together and work with other members. Will other candidates have a role to play if you are elected leader? So, who wants to take that one first?
Is it my turn to
Gareth?
go first?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Yes, developing the point I just made, it is a team effort. Now, the three of us here, Mike, Freddie and myself, obviously I'm standing in for Ben, but the same would apply for Ben. We all have a broad agreement about where we think UKIP should be going. We have a broad agreement about certain things, such as professionalising the party, looking at the aspect of regional representation. All of these things are things that we are, I wouldn't say that we're totally in agreement on, because there are three different candidates present. In my case, I'm standing in, but I don't think there's any reason why Freddie, myself, Ben, Mike, we can't all work together. And it would be in that spirit that we would take things forward. We are a depleted bunch in UKIP. We've had some torrid times. Some talented people have left. Some of those people may come back because there is no longevity with the Brexit Party. The clue is in the name. We may get Brexit soon. We have a Prime Minister who seems determined to get it. So I am hopeful that we may get Brexit soon. Of course, time will tell what eventually develops, and immigration in the long term will still be a massive issue. Political correctness will still be a massive issue. The Conservatives won't touch these things. So hopefully there will be a role for UKIP in the future. There will be a vacuum in British politics on the scene, so we need to exploit that. We need to move into that vacuum. We need a talented team of people to do it. I think the three of us and Ben would all work together positively, and Ben is very keen on having a collegiate approach, on looking at where the talent lies among the grassroots members, bringing people together, having meetings of the spokespeople. The spokespeople have largely been neglected over the past few months. Nobody really knows what the spokespeople do or who they are, so we need to have an audit of what talent we've got in the party. Ben is very keen on this, and he's very keen on bringing people together. That's very much what he stands for.
Yeah, I think you're going to get the same answer from. I've worked with Gareth on the NEC, I've worked with Ben on the NEC, and I've known Freddie for
Longer than either of us choose to.
yeah, we was at school together. No, we wasn't. But yeah, it's teamwork. I've always ever since I've left school, it's teamwork. It's always been team. With the military, it's been team. It's teamwork. I've always been part of a team. I've always been a team player. And as I've said earlier on, we cannot do this alone. The leader cannot do this alone. Gerard had many good points, but one point that failed him, he was a micromanager. He wouldn't listen. He wouldn't listen to me. I was his deputy and he wouldn't listen. You have to listen. You have to listen to the people around you. You have to listen to the team that you brought in around you. And as Gareth said, there's lots and lots of talent in this party that's never been tapped. And we have to do that. And I'm quite sure that we can work together. And it's not about me. As I've said, I don't want to see this party crash and burn. It's about the party. We have to become an electoral threat again. And to do that, we have to work together as a team and push forward. And as a team, we can succeed.
I love cats. UKIPers are like cats. Herding cats is impossible. If you try to herd cats, they'll do the opposite. Getting people together is what the question was about. That's what I've done for 4 years as regional chairman in London. Sometimes quite difficult, because London does not have a county structure. There are just no counties. It's the branches and the ordinary members, the important ones, and then there's me. So this sort of ferrets in the sack type behaviour, and how to sort them out. They're squabbling for no reason. I'm used to dealing with, and the national it'll be no different. So there are currently two wings, though. One is the wing who thinks the sun shines out of a certain person's unmentionable, and the others who don't. Now there's a degree of truth in both. Gerard is an honourable man, and there is no. I'm not making a Brutus type speech for those into Shakespeare. However, he's been badly wrong, and he's gone wrong, and he has not listened when he's had people like me shouting at him, telling him to stop, that he's just wrong, he's going down the wrong path, and he's not listened. But there are other people on the other side who's perhaps making some errors too. Both of these sides have to be brought together, and further there's the complication of Tommy and Carl Benjamin and all these other ancillary people, Mark Meakin, for example, who have some role to play, some of them, but most of them I don't really want to be anywhere close to the party. Certainly Tommy can do his stuff. We will help him if he gets thrown into jail again improperly, but otherwise this is not a party about individuals like that. We have to draw a line and separate them. Now, in this, my own skills are in, well, I ran a software house, lines 16 to 18 on page 2 of the CV, and I'm actually not joking, Digital Precision. Had about 100 programmers working, all of them individualists and a bit cat-like, a bit like UKIP. Lots of bright people, but lots of different ideas, how to get them together and get the best out of them. You don't get the best out of people by telling them they're working for me. Heaven forbid. They're working with me, and I am privileged to work with them. And that idea actually does things which work. Also, luring people back from the Brexit party, that is very important. While I hope that my two colleagues here are correct, I am not going to assume that the Brexit party is just going to fold. Whatever its name may be, they can change their name. They are fielding local election candidates now in by-elections. They are hunting for them. We might have a long struggle against them. I have the one thing that Nigel doesn't have, I believe, and that is I can persuade people to come away from Nigel and that they can have a home back in UKIP. Many of these people are good people who've left us. They're not bad uns who've gone and joined the Brexit party. They got fed up. They had enough of it. All this nonsense and being insulted and abused because they were into, again, Hitler saluting pug dogs and so on. This is just nuts. We've got to draw a line there, bring people back in from the Brexit party, but not in to create sabotage, because we've certainly got saboteurs. Oh, we've got a few of our own saboteurs inside the Brexit party. We're not completely stupid. However, this battle is partly internal and partly external. It's bringing different sides together. It's telling them that the Brexit Party is ultimately boring. They're not going to do anything because Nigel will not touch these important issues. He can't really expand his power base anymore. He's reached saturation within his target audience of largely conservative voting people. He's not taken much from Labour. We can go for the Labour vote. I'm working class myself. I forgot to get my nails dirty, but they often have been dirty simply because I've been digging or doing things like that myself. I've been working since I was 15. I don't know any other mode. I sleep 4.5 hours a night. If I sleep more than that, then I start getting really irritable. So please vote for me, because bringing people together is what I'm good at. Thank you. They all hate me more than they hate each other. That's another one that works.
There was a development during our interval there. Mr. Braine has submitted some remarks that he'd like to share with you, so if you'll indulge me. Thank you all for coming. I regret that I'm not with you. I've had not one but 2 flights from 2 different airports cancelled this afternoon. I deliberately booked an earlier flight so that I had a second chance to reach you, but it turns out that I left wanting a third. There is much talk of connecting with the grassroots of the party. I alone, amongst the candidates, have a plan for doing so. I've already developed software to gather canvassing data with ease using smartphones or other web devices. This software will put us in touch with supporters who will grow our membership and evolve our already excellent manifesto. I intend to grow this software to include a policy form which enables you, the members, to up and down vote suggestions so that the NEC and leader can see at a glance which policy and operational ideas are popular with members and to act to implement them. The press will not hang garlands on us for staying quiet about urgent issues which affect British independence. Instead, they will hunt us down like stray dogs. UKIP did not achieve the miracle of reasserting the principle of nationhood by kowtowing to the establishment press. Instead, we spoke up about the loss of our nation and our hard-won rights, even when it seemed hopeless and made us unpopular. In 2017, we gained 1.8% in the general election, not because we had failed, but because we succeeded in forcing other parties to promise to deliver UKIP policy. We are years ahead of mainstream opinion, and we forge it, because we are independent in thought, not just the same. Please continue the tradition of UKIP by standing up for the truth, no matter how unpopular it is today. The reward for this stubborn adherence to truth may not be status, office, or recognition, but the satisfaction of seeing our principles adopted without thanks by politicians in the UK and far beyond. The principles of nationhood, the example of British culture, and the promotion of freedom are too valuable to compromise for the sake of approval by those who may never understand why it matters. St. Paul told the demoralised early church, "Acquit yourselves like men, be strong with hope in your hearts, hold on to what you know to be good and right. We will rise again, but not if the cost is abandoning the belief in good and right and justice." Let's rebuild UKIP into the force that was feared by venal traitors against the United Kingdom. Let's unite again with the tools that I will deliver. Become once again the vanguard of British independence in the modern world, which more than any other country the United Kingdom built.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have another couple of written questions here, and then we'll open it to the floor. So, here's a simple one here. Would you, if you became leader, lower or change UKIP's membership fee? Freddie?
I would reintroduce the 2 classes, because for many people it is a hardship. Now, the facts are that many people took the reduced rate. This is simply arithmetic fact. I don't have to go to the treasurers of UKIP for information. They usually come to me for advice. So I know where the situation was. The treasurers, thankfully, have not been accountants. The accountants look backwards all the time. I only pretend. I never worked as an accountant. I would introduce this because members are a valuable resource. They give us so much in terms of their time, which would be extremely expensive to get. Also, it's illegal in the UK to use paid campaigning in political elections. There are huge restrictions on it for any paid campaigning. It's got to be, so unpaid campaigning is what rules, and that's what we need members for. We don't need to deter them. They are our best resource. As I said before, the solutions to money problems come from large donors. They come with their own issues and problems, but we have to get them back. Mike is completely correct. He has said before that currently they don't want to touch us because they can't hide. They have to disclose. They do not want their names associated with UKIP. That is indeed a real tragedy that it's come to this. All you far-right, racist bigots and so on, of whom I'm the worst example. Yeah? We know we're not any of these things. We are decent people fighting for what's right. If a Malaysian says Malaysia is a country which is for Malaysians, but foreigners are welcome and there, but they're not to take over and not to tell Malaysians how to work, what do you call such people? You call them Malaysians. If they were Somali, you'd say the same, they're Somali. But when they're English or British saying it, we're racists, and that's just nonsense. That's just nonsense. We have got right on our side. We just make this point. We will eventually get large donors back. We need just one or two at the beginning to keep us afloat. There might be a general election around the corner, and that is going to be a huge barrier for progress right now, because we're going to be faced with any number of dilemmas here as to whether to stand or not stand. My policy, it would be to stand, because if currently we're not even taking votes away from Brexiteers because we're so low in the polls, but that at least keeps us in the public eye. And it has been said by Mike that people he has encountered, certainly I weren't even aware that UKIP still existed. Well, we do exist. Our last general election policy was madness. Stand or stand aside. We stand. We stand. We stand there as UKIP. And we get back into the good books of the public by refuting quietly and efficiently the lies told about us in the mainstream media. We do it by keeping our name in the public eye for the right reasons, not to do with scandal. So the correct answer to this question is it's going to be tricky, but we can do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. The membership fee, that's something that has been a matter of some contention over the past couple of years. It has been discussed on the NEC, and we did have a change in the way that the membership fees were collected, because we did go over to monthly, giving an option for people paying monthly by direct debit. So we need to look at how successful that's been. We have to look at the evidence and come to a rational decision about how we do the membership fees in the future. So we need to have a look at have the monthly fees really worked. It seems in some ways a good idea to allow people to pay a smaller sum each month, but then on the other hand you have the problem of people not continuing it. It's easier to actually discontinue one's membership. So we have to have a look at what the figures have told us. We would have to have a chat with the Treasurer and assess rationally, has that policy worked? The other issue is whether the central party or whether the branches collect the membership fee, and there is a good case for the local branches having the membership fee for the first year, because that gives them an incentive to actually go out and recruit more members. But ultimately the definitive answer is that I don't know, and Ben doesn't know what we should actually do definitively, because we need to look at the evidence and we need to discuss it, and we need the membership themselves to also have an input on this. But Ben is very keen on the grassroots being empowered, and I know that he's very keen on the local branches going back to having the subscriptions for the first year, because he is very keen to incentivise recruitment of new members.
Back in the day, Steve Crowther brought a ruling out where it's £30 for a membership fee, but if you want, you can pay £15. I'll pay £15, thank you. Andre said, I'll pay the 15 quid. It was a stupid decision. So it was £30. Branches kept the first fee for themselves. Gerard, stop that. I said, that's wrong, Gerard. No, he's going to stop that. We should keep that. That puts money directly into the branch. Now, when I was regional chair, I used to say, well, if they haven't got any money, say to them, okay, we will say that you've given us the fee, but we want you to go out campaigning, and make sure they went out campaigning, because that was worth more than the 30 quid to get somebody out every weekend leafleting. But also, Gerard scrapped the veterans. They got a reduced fee. He scrapped that one. He scrapped the pensioners, got a reduced fee. He scrapped that. You know, I'd bring all of those back. And I would scrap the £4 one, because I think for £4, you remember for a month, and you can do all sorts of damage in that month, and then leave. So I want the £30 off you. If you truly, you know, want to be part of the party, you pay your £30. So I would bring that back as well. But really, we've got to look at the membership fee, and we've got to bring back some of the things. I want to see veterans, I want to see pensioners coming in and on a reduced fee, and I want to see YIs as well on a reduced fee. Some of the young kids out there that haven't got a lot of money, get them in, because YI are the good lads, they're the future of the party, but they're very, very active. They will go out there and campaign, so I would reduce that as well, and I would get that in. And we are struggling for finance, but we cannot depend purely on subscriptions. We have to be a successful party where we can bring the donors in. And we'll only do that by getting out there and campaigning and winning elections. And by managing the subscription fee right, we will get those people in, and we will get those people campaigning and leafleting. So there's a raft of stuff that I would bring in. I'll bring back what Gerard scrapped, and as I say, when I was his deputy, there's lots of things he wouldn't listen to me on, and I said, this is wrong, Gerard, he wouldn't listen. But I think it's been folly. I think it's been absolute folly. And I'd bring back some of the things, veterans, pensioners, YIs, bring them people back in again.
Okay, the next one's a more personal one. What motivated you to join the UK Independence Party initially?
Anger. Cold anger at what they've done. Cold rage. How dare they do this to us? How dare they? Who is the they? It's hard to define. There are all sorts of groups. Most of them are motivated by folly, stupidity. Sometimes there is a bit of a master plan as well. There are overt organizations like Common Purpose, which should be actually made illegal, because it's training people how to subvert the law and to exceed the law. And by cooperation between bodies which should be checking on each other, get around things and to achieve aims which don't reflect the aspirations of common people. That means me, you. This rage in me manifests itself not in these paroxysms of fury, which I can put on for the purposes of the cameras, which go down very well and make sure we get slots on the mainstream media, but it is a cold, calculating rage. I'm a chess player. I like winning. Feeling good is a very, very poor substitute. It's also very unreliable, because you think you're winning and in fact you're not winning. This calculation is really what brought me into it. For 4 years before I joined UKIP, I programmed using two skills of mine. One is with the language, with which I'm not entirely unfamiliar, and the other one is with computer programming. And my robotic programs were playing havoc under Google, YouTube, then the Daily Mail comments and the Daily Telegraph comments. They were playing, these lefty Marxist idiots were arguing with my computer programs, which were putting in comments by the million, literally, drawn from a large menu of pre-written questions and answers that I had put up. This is in the readers' comment sections. When finally the Daily Mail found ways of preventing me, which I couldn't get around, and the Daily Telegraph, there was no one else to fight. They eventually gave up. Their fingers dropped off. My program's fingers never dropped off. And then I joined UKIP, because there was no further point in not doing it openly, and I immediately stood as a parliamentary candidate and distributed in my very first election campaign in Chingford and Woodford Green, in Churchill's historic constituency. His statue is at a place where he often used to sit and look out on a bench, and that's in walking distance of my front door. I love Epping Forest. That election alone, I had distributed 213,000 pieces of paper in one parliamentary election. That was from 7 months from the 7th of October 2014 to the 7th of May 2015. But the anger was the actual underlying motive. How dare they? I was given various gifts which I did nothing to deserve at birth, including the gift of a gab. It would be very churlish of me not to use it for the good of the people, to fight. That's what, but the answer is one word. Anger, rage. That's what drove me to it.
Yeah. Well, I joined back in 2007, late 2007. At that time, I had my own company. I employed 12 guys, and I was fitting laboratories. And I had an 18-month contract in Bracknell, Syngenta, big spot there, and we was fitting laboratories. And there was every trade on there: plumbers, electricians, painters, everybody. We had specialist gas fitters. And to get on that site, I had to pay, and at that point it was £90 for a CSCS card. It was a health and safety card. And all of the lads I had working with me, I had to pay for their CSCS card. And it was health and safety. Without that card, you couldn't walk on the site. There was Eastern Europeans working on that site that couldn't speak English. If you'd have shouted fire, I don't know what the hell you was talking about. And I thought, this can't be right. Then one of the Sparkies I'd known for months, he said, I'm off the site on Friday. I said, what's going on? He said, well, they've brought some Eastern Europeans in and they've undercut me. He said, I can't compete with this. And I'm thinking, well, this can't be right. So, other than shouting at the TV, you know, like everybody else does, I went on the computer and I looked at every party. And I looked right through them all, the National Front, the BNP, I looked at all of these parties, Conservatives, Labour. Labour weren't doing anything for me, they'd abandoned me years ago. And I've never ever been in a political party and they've done anything politically. And I saw UKIP. And I didn't know the old Nigel Farage. I'd never even met the bloke. Never heard of him. Never heard of him. So I looked at the policies that they had. I'm like, well, yeah, I agree with it. Didn't agree with all of them, but I agree with that. So I gave him 20 quid. That's what it was at that time. And then I forgot about it. And then months later, I got a letter saying that there was an AGM in the city centre. So I went along. And I don't know the history, if you know the history of Hull. Charles I tried to enter Hull in the 1600s and he was refused. And above the pub is a room called the plotting room. So this is where they're having this meeting. So I walks in and I looked round the door and there was two old women and a bloke. And I went, sorry. And I went downstairs and I said, where's this UKIP meeting? She says, in the plotting room. So I went, UKIP? Oh, come in, son. Come in, son. So, and I got in with these, and they was absolutely brilliant, fantastic people. And at that point, there was 4 members. That's all we had, 4 members. And I got in with them, and I joined, and we started campaigning and leafleting. And from that little there, I went right up to branch region, up to where I am now, because it grabs you. Politics grabs you. And I got into something that I loved, and I was bloody good at. And this is how I am where I am today. It was just something that grabbed me, and it's been a fantastic journey, absolutely fantastic. I've met some fantastic people, brilliant people, and hundreds and hundreds. I go all over the country now, and people I've known for many, many years. I see them all, and it's been a brilliant experience. And it's something I've never ever regretted. Never regretted. I would never be a part of any other party. Farage can stuff his Brexit party because there's no way I'm going to go with that scam merchant. Labour Party's got an head case for a leader. Boris is in now. I think Tories actually have got a leader now that they've been looking for many, many years. The Greens, they're on wacky-backy. The Lib Dems, never ever write the Lib Dems off, never, because they're down and then they've got this young lass now who said, well, if we lose a second referendum, we're still not going to accept it. So she's really, really democratic. So yeah, I'm in the best party, a party I love, a party I've supported and fought for and campaigned for, and I've never regretted a day of ever coming into this and seeing all you mad sods.
Ben runs his own company. He's got a building company, and he's very interested in the regulations that affect SMEs, small and medium enterprises. He thinks it is very restrictive, there is too much red tape, and it's very hard to run small businesses because of that. Leaving the EU does give a lot of opportunities. So Ben is very keen on this idea of cutting red tape, and he is interested in issues like procurement, whereby you can have companies, British companies, given contracts in the public sector, for instance, which we can't really do while we are in the EU because the EU prohibits this. So he is very keen to use procurement to help British industry, British businesses, and this was one of the factors, I'm sure, that motivated Ben to join UKIP in the first place. So there is that aspect of regulation and red tape and cutting that, but we also need to have consumer affairs protected. So Ben is a classical liberal in terms of he doesn't want big government, he wants small government, but he does want real teeth for the regulators. So we should have consumer affairs prioritised, and there are many areas where consumers need to be protected, such as, for instance, pension provision, buying railway tickets, gas and electricity contracts, things like this, which have been neglected. He's very keen to look at this and to prioritise consumer affairs by having very effective regulation. But we want Britain to be an entrepreneurial nation. Ben runs his own company, as I say, so he wants to invoke the entrepreneurial spirit by reducing regulations, cutting red tape where we can, and allowing small and medium enterprises to flourish in Britain.
Okay, and now we come to the elephant in the room. Since a main contender has been deliberately excluded from the leadership election and a legal challenge is pending, can this election be deemed valid? Mike, you want to start this one?
Yeah. Gerard was excluded by the NEC. The NEC, the people that you voted for. It was a democratic vote that was taken. None of the candidates was in that room when that decision was taken. He was excluded, basically, for one part, for going against the Constitution. Something I'm very, very proud of. Our Constitution says, the party shall conduct itself and its affairs in such a way that it does not discriminate against or in favour of any person on the grounds of their race, religion, ethnic origin, education, belief, sexual orientation, class, social status, sectarianism or any other basis prescribed by law. I'm proud to stand on the street with that Constitution. You people are not above the Constitution. If you would have been thrown out, not a thing would have been said. The regional chairs are not above the Constitution. The party chairman is not above the Constitution, and neither is the leader. Nigel Farage was a dictator. He's gone. Are we going to bring in another dictator? Gerard has gone. He didn't come to the selection, to the vetting on the day, because he said, why should I? Well, I was a deputy leader and I was there. He wrote in June a resignation to the NEC, and the NEC wouldn't accept it because they said there is up and coming election, so wait until then. He had a vote of no confidence in him, where his backside was saved by Piers Walker, who reworded it and saved his backside. On the day, Piers asked him, will you come to this vetting? And he said no. Piers gave him an extra day to come to it, and he still wouldn't come to it. He wouldn't defend himself. He wouldn't come and speak about it. The NEC took that decision. It was their decision and their decision alone. They are the governing body of this party. Any legal challenge goes to them because they are the governing body. So they took that decision. I stand by that decision. They are the governing body. They've made the decision on the facts and the evidence that there was given at the time, and a lot of it I'm not in possession of, I didn't know about, but it's up to them to make that decision. They've made the decision, let's get on with it. Now the people that are putting money together and are crowdfunding this have to realise, and lots of these people, nobody knows where they come from. Are they out from out the country? Are they from the Brexit party?
Do you accept numbers?
No, not all of them.
Alan Craig is one of them.
Well, he's one of them, he's a member. When they put that forward, when they put that money forward, and I know this for a fact because of the Jane Collins case, if there is a counterclaim, if the party then sue the people that sue in the party, and the party win, say they win £1 million, every one of those people that's put money into that crowdfunding is liable for that £1 million. Every one of them. So I hope they know what they're doing. As far as I'm concerned, this was a legitimate case. The NEC put it forward, and they won it. And the other thing about Gerard says, I'm not suing the party. Well, you cannot sue the party on behalf of someone else. So, is he suing the party or isn't he? Or is he saying, I'm not suing the party because I don't want to be the same as Henry Bolton, who was suing the party and got the vote, or Susan Evans, who was suing the party and has never been seen again? You know, what is he doing? Is he suing the party or isn't he? It's up to him. As far as I'm concerned, this is a legitimate leadership election. But if it isn't, I may sue the party because I've spent £6,500 and thousands of pounds travelling around the country in food, lodgings, petrol and everything else, and my time. So if this is wasted, I might sue the party. Where does it end? Are we all going to sue the party? Or shall we just get on and start winning elections again?
When are we going to know if the ballot's going to end?
The ballot papers will be out next week.
This was raised legal position if you were to help towards somebody, sponsor somebody. And the legal opinion was no, you would not be liable for a counter sue.
You are.
That's the first thing.
He'll
I can
tell
do
you
is-
because he sat in the Crown Court. James, what is your legal position?
The party paid out, what was it?
Three-
Best part of £500,000
Yeah.
because it was considered to be attributed to the Jane Collins case, which was her being sued. It had put £80,000 into a defence, and Labour sued the party. They won.
It's not.
Not
May
according
I?
to
May I?
the-
May I? Sir, we've spoken off camera as well, and let's not have this too adversarial, please, because we are on the real same side, and the real enemy is Lib Lab, Con, Groan, Ramon, Brexit, and that's not us. Look,
sure,
my
go
friend,
ahead.
we are not. I'm not a lawyer, thankfully. There's not a question of countersuing. There's not a question of countersuing. It's simply a matter of getting costs. So in that, everyone here has spoken incorrectly. It's not a question of countersuing. It's a question of costs. Costs are automatically awarded, as James Pawlowski said, except talking about perhaps countersuing. It's not. It's automatic awarding of cost. And if you have backed the losing side in a case like this, you are jointly and severally liable without limitation for that. That is precisely why in the Jane Collins trial, we got done over. And if two people hadn't died at the right time, I know that Gerard is not claiming responsibility for that, and we rushed through probate. Well, I've heard all this hero worship stuff. Look, friends, my last hero was Batman. Yeah, and that was I was 9. So grow up, grow up. Your heroes will just let you down, whether they're called Tommy, Gerard, or Freddie. Don't do it. Use your mind, be powerful, and stick to the truth, and that is when we'll win. Stick to the truth. That is our powerful, that is the best armor to have. Not to hero worship or listen to Freddie simply because he's bombastic or persuasive or whatever in between. Listen to the facts. That will get across to people. Right now, I don't want to be here. I'm pretty unhappy with the NEC doing this. I realize they know more than I did. We are where we are. The NEC had privy to a lot of information. The only NEC member here is Gareth, but he was excluded from all discussions. So was Ben Walker. They had no part in any of the discussions about this because it was obviously leadership dependent. It took me by surprise. I didn't expect it. It took me completely by surprise. But I can tell you as a matter of truth, I am the regional chairman of London. I organised lots of things in London and outside. Gerard refused to come to any hustings. This is when his name was on the ballot paper beforehand. He just refused, point blank. And there's no reason. I said, is it because I'm the chair? He was using Richard Braine as the intermediary. I've known Gerard for ages. He just doesn't want this anymore. He's being portrayed as something he isn't. He's been doing it for 27 years. For God's sake, give the man a break. He's had enough. He doesn't want it. So you're pushing him and other people bringing lawsuits in his name. I'm not a lawyer, but the wrong person is on the name as the plaintiff. The plaintiff should be Gerard Batten. And also, who's the defendant? The defendant should be the UK Independence Party, not individuals in it. Because unless you can prove that the directors were acting completely contrary to what is the interests of the party and the company, and doing it deliberately, it is not the directors or the NEC who can be sued. So this is a case, the wrong person suing the wrong person, and the person who should be suing, if anyone is suing, doesn't want to be doing it because he knows how to be associated. This whole thing, there's a word, a terrible word for it. I'm not going to say it because I'm supposed to be a politician, but the first word is cluster, and the second thing is things which happen in bedrooms. And we shouldn't be here, you know. We shouldn't be here. I've even got Keith Lonsdale laughing at me. My God, I've won this, haven't I, mate? You give me the fight. I'll have Gerard on the phone whenever it's needed. He will still be there. But it's not going to be his face on the front, which is what you'll get with Richard Braine. You'll just get him there. I don't like to hit somebody when they're not here, but Richard knows this. Just acting like a counterfeit Gerard Batten is not on. Gerard's had his chance. He didn't want it. He can't just push Richard in without a proper election, because this is what half of it was about. If you knew the sublines and minutiae about it, you would understand it better. I am angry at where we are, but I want us to win elections and get to a powerful position again and have all of you proud to be UKIP, instead of confused or misinformed. Thank you. You've got a question.
Einstein has been saying, doing the same
Is the definition of insanity. We know. No speeches. Speeches from here.
Right?
Yes. I'm a physicist. You don't need to quote Einstein to
Here's
me.
the latest exclusive UKIP head office can't stay memberships of Gerard Batten supporters.
That is not true. Let me tell you, that is not true. I've seen that is you're printed in Kipper Central. It is a lie. When I get people unhappy, and about 2/3 of them were unhappy that Gerard was excluded, 1/3 were unhappy about what our involvement with Tommy. I'm sitting on about 20 resignations in London, where I've persuaded those people not to send it to head office. Because when they send the resignation letter to head office, people are removed. If you say, I'm resigning from UKIP, they remove them immediately. Because anything they do after they've said they've resigned, head office do not want to have the responsibility for it. It's really as simple as that. There isn't a conspiracy. People saying they resign, and they are then removed from UKIP. If you show me one case where the person hasn't resigned, and they have been removed without due judicial process, which in this case means NEC, or the party chairman, then I will resign from UKIP, because it's just not happening.
Well,
You're believing Kipper Central's fibs.
Well,
Thank you.
membership
Sit
has
down.
expired.
I'm not really defending this. I don't know why it's being directed at me, but I will be on the side of truth. Your turn.
Can we simplify this somewhat? This is a leadership election. Now I'm in a slightly better position to answer this question because I was a leadership candidate myself at the outset, and Ben was a candidate as well. Mike was a candidate, Helena Windsor was a candidate, and Gerard Batten was a candidate. Those were the 5 at the time. And we were told what the rules were, and we knew that we had to abide by the rules to be valid leadership candidates. And we weren't actually going to be allowed to enter the ballot until we had gone through a vetting interview. And 4 of the 5 of us turned up for the vetting interview on a Sunday in London. Mike came all the way down from Hull. Me and Ben were in an NEC meeting in the afternoon anyway, but we turned up for the vetting. Helena came to the vetting as well. The one person who did not come to the vetting was Gerard Batten. He was offered another date for the vetting, and he didn't go along with that either. He did not abide by the rules of the election, and therefore his candidacy was totally null and void. That is all we need to know about this. You can further ask, do we really need to give special treatment to any of those candidates, and would it be a valid leadership election if any of those candidates was given special treatment? Why does Batten think he should be afforded special treatment? And number 2, do you really have any respect for someone who is taking legal action against the party and doesn't even have the courage to front it up himself, but is hiding behind other people? That is all you need to know. We are active in a party and we're working for the ends of that party. Another person is trying to take legal action against that party. How much respect do you really have for that person?
But the question was also, sir, it was also whether or not people are being excluded from UKIP because they're Gerard supporters. This is just a lie. This sort of smearing is just unworthy of anyone here.
Fred, please let me chair the meeting. Okay? Now I'm going to ask everybody to calm down, because if this nonsense continues, I'm just going to call an end to it, and you can all just go home, okay? Because I'm not going to put up with this kind of nonsense. That's not why I'm here tonight, okay? Now, is there any questions from the floor? Yes, go ahead.
UKIP, party of the working class. One of the most important groups there used to be was the UKIP trade unionist group. With the candidates, like reform that group, it was very important, and it was a very important group to reaching out, especially in the Labour heartlands. I know what I call that's an area where you're from there, Mike. It was very influential, especially within groups, to get out. So would any of the candidates get that group reformed again?
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I helped fund that when it first set off. And as somebody that's from a Labour heartland, this is where I believe the party should start directing its energy. Because I don't think we're going to win any seats in the Tory areas. I think we're going to win the seats in Labour. Labour people now that I'm in the supermarket, in the pubs, whatever, these guys are saying, I've always voted, it's the old thing, I've always voted Labour, father voted Labour, grandfather voted Labour. But we will not vote Labour while Corbyn is leading it. So they've got no home to go to. They've got nowhere to put that vote. So I believe we should be that home. We should be that party, and we should be scooping. And we should have been doing this for maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years. We should have been scooping them votes up, and we haven't. Because we haven't been talking to them, and we haven't been listening to them. And that's what we've got to start doing. And that is an area that is just wide open. We should be in there, and that's where we should be gaining all our support from. So I would get that back together. And I can never understand, and I think it's because they're funded by the European Union, why all these big unions back being inside the EU. You know, because they're just giving their jobs away to a work pool of 500 million people. They should be looking after their own people. So we should be, if we could, talk to the unions and get in with them and get in with that working environment, those people that's out there that's looking for a home that will not vote Labour. And we should be that party. We should be scooping them votes up. We must be the party of the working man and woman.
Spot on. Of course we should. It's an open goal over here. It's ridiculous that we are not scooping up more of the votes, and it's a real commentary on how wrong we've gone over the last 18 months that we aren't already. We've got the Conservatives who do not have a captain in charge of SS Great Britain, sailing ship Great Britain. They have a barnacle attached to its hull called Theresa May, now replaced, finally scraped off after holding on with every bit of her limpet-like structures. And then we have the Labour Party run by a man who is more at home addressing terrorist groups than addressing the citizens of his country. Shameful, dishonest, deceitful, and a person who has abandoned everything he said he stood for. He has become that which he said he hated. We have the Lib Dems who are resurgent, so we have to be very wary of them. But with the main two parties being like this, why haven't we scooped up Labour and other votes altogether? If we can get help from the trade union groups, we should. My first conference at Doncaster, I made an impromptu speech at the trade union room, the room where the trade union movement was being addressed. This was in 2014. So absolutely, yes, we should. We are not a party of left or right. We're a party of right and wrong. Therefore, vote UKIP.
I think it's very important that we try to get the working class vote and the lower middle class vote. Labour has largely abandoned the working class. It's happened over a course of 30 or 40 years actually, but it's becoming even more evident with Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. He represents a very hard left ideology. It only really appeals to middle class intellectuals. It isn't going to resonate with working class people. And we need to move into that vacuum that has been created by Labour, not trying to represent the working class anymore, and we need to try to recruit working class members, and we need to try to get working class votes. It was interesting in the European elections where we did badly, but the one area where we actually did less badly than the others was the northeast of England, which is a very industrial area. It is very working class, and I think that we do have to tailor some policies and deliberately target them at the working class, they are that is an area where we could do well. Now, we had a trade union bill that went through the Welsh Assembly. I was the only one in the UKIP group who actually wanted to support that bill initially. It was a Labour bill, but I did manage to persuade the group to support it because I thought it would look very bad if we actually seemed to be a party like the Conservatives that were against trade union rights, and we did actually back the Labour bill. So the Conservatives were against the trade unions on that occasion, we were in favour, and I thought it was very meaningful to differentiate ourselves from the Conservatives, who will always take issue with trade union rights and things like that. There has to be a balance, and we have to support workers. We have to represent their interests. So I think that we do need to move into that area. We should reinstigate the trade union group as a special interest group within UKIP, and that's something that we should prioritise. And I think that we need to look at re-establishing that as a priority going forward in the future.
Okay, Raymond.
Speaking mainly as Northern Ireland representative of support for the family in UKIP, we have sent out a questionnaire to the 4 candidates, and we've just had 2 replies, so we need a reply from Ben Walker and also from Mike Hookham. So that would be greatly appreciated. We have a website as well, www.supportforthefamily.org. But my question essentially is 3-pronged. Will you, if appointed as leader or elected as leader, appoint a family and children's spokesperson, something that is greatly needed because of the Muslim grooming gangs and other things? Number 2, will you defend the rights of parents to oppose and withdraw their children from LGBT indoctrination in the schools of England, and that will come to Northern Ireland? Number 3, will you oppose the planned extreme abortion regime which is being planned at the minute in Westminster for Northern Ireland, and the denial by Westminster of the clear wishes of Northern Ireland men and women as expressed in the Assembly in 2016, I think it was, and that was that we should not have abortion in Northern Ireland. Thank you.
To appoint a family and children's spokesperson is a fine idea. It's a very important thing to most of us as parents, so that's fine. However, you said because of Muslim grooming gangs. I don't care whether they're Muslim grooming gangs or not. It's any grooming gangs. Why are we making this front and center? You're making the same mistake. Stop doing it. Stop doing it. You're mixing up the wrong people in this. They've got an agenda about Islam, Islam, Islam. There's 1.8 billion Muslims in the world. Most of them agree with us on most things. They're not our enemy. You said Muslim grooming gangs, why didn't you just say grooming gangs? I'm supposed to be a man of many words. I would have left out one there. Because my objection to non-Muslim grooming gangs is exactly the same as my objection to Muslim ones. Let's target the crime and the criminal, not a large group. Why shoot ourselves in the foot? Please. Secondly, good questions, by the way. LGBT indoctrination. It's absurd. They're trying to teach children of 6 primary school children. There's 23 or 43 or some other crazy number of genders, and fill their head with nonsense when it should be with reading, writing, and arithmetic and having fun and playing with other kids and all this. Not all this nonsense. So I wouldn't allow it. One tiny bit. You do realize that some of your strongest allies in this are Muslims, because it's the Muslim families in Birmingham who are exposing exactly this happening. Right. So consider yourself reprimanded in the nicest way possible. Yes, we be smart. We've been stupid. We've got the right ideas, but we're going about them in an utterly stupid way, and we are seeing, Einstein's already been quoted correctly. I'll quote Richard Feynman. He said, when theory collides with practice, throw out the theory. That's another greater physicist than Einstein of the last century. I am a physicist myself. The first 2 are very easy ones. The third one is abortion. Every abortion, in my opinion, is an absolute tragedy. Almost everyone. The woman doesn't want to do it. She's going to live with it all her lives, but the choice has to be hers. We can't have... Let's take UKIP's general policy. It was a very smart one with which we fought the 2015 election. It was about local referenda. So if you have an issue like, say, fox hunting, let the local people decide. And that's ideally suited for this. However, things like abortion can't be done locally because the people will travel, and if we try and make it delegitimize it, and people can't travel for whatever reason, then they'll use backstreet abortionists, and all sorts of other things will happen. Horrible things will happen. Now, I have not been given the gift of faith myself. I was born an agnostic, and I suspect, barring divine revelation, I will perish an agnostic. I just don't know, and I don't pretend to know. And please respect me for that. I have been told I'd get more votes by telling people fibs, but that is not my way. I will not. I believe the mother's rights are paramount, I'm afraid. So I do not support a Northern Ireland only ban on abortions.
What about the right to life of the child?
Every one is a tragedy. Every one of these cases is a tragedy. Why make it even worse by criminalizing it? I want delays on abortion. I want the woman having to go through counselling and all sorts of other things, but to actually physically fully stop her in Northern Ireland, when all she has to do is get the ferry to Stranraer, which is a very quick one, and have it done off on ferry. It's nuts. This is bringing the law into disrepute by having such laws. I really think so, especially when the Republic is heading in the other direction. I feel very strongly about this.
This is a more
The woman.
extreme regime than
I do understand.
That's been put through Westminster.
I do understand that, but this is a matter to deal with great sensitivity. The people involved, their lives are often destroyed. I doubt I am unhappily or happily not gender fluid myself. I have been born with the bits I was born with, and I'm not confused about what to do with them. But without any, and I don't have much of my female genes are regressive, clearly, very regressive. But trying to think as a woman does, it's impossible for the average woman to ever get over having an abortion. She'll always wonder the what if. Why add to her punishment with whatever religious or other sincere feelings you have on this matter? I think I will go with the majority in the United Kingdom and say leave abortion laws roughly where they are. That's my answer. I'm sorry if it doesn't agree.
Bringing them to Northern Ireland then?
Bringing?
You are for bringing them to Northern Ireland?
You mean from the Republic?
No, from the UK, from GB to Northern Ireland.
I think you're talking about the laws.
I am
It's
talking
not
about.
involved,
I
Mark.
understand.
You don't
Yes.
want it to
When
be
you said bringing
involved.
them, I'm started to think of all sorts of bringing the laws.
You don't want it to be a devolved matter.
I'm not sure this one should be a devolved matter, to be honest. I'm really not sure that it should be. That's my sincere answer. Again, I stress these are individually tragedies. There is no winners in an abortion case, and I know it has affected the personal lives of certain people, not myself in my own case, but of other people I've been close to in UKIP, even potentially among people who thought of being leadership candidates. And this always leaves people with the doubts and the worries. Where we are in law, we cannot allow religious sensibilities to override everything else. But there are no winners. I'm just sad. I wouldn't strongly oppose or strongly push for either point of view. I think in general in the UK things are where they are. Maybe it's okay to leave Northern Ireland where it is and leave it a devolved matter. My feelings are not strong about this. But any attempts to make abortion harder, apart from counselling the woman, telling her, perhaps explicitly telling her, you're probably going to regret this up to the point you die. Yeah, just that it might be the case. It's like a cigarette warning. This is not. You're not going to be able to come back from this. That might be needed, but I think they already do this. If I knew anyone close to me was thinking of having an abortion, a lady, I would try. If she was a friend, I would tell her what I've just told you. But I would not dress it up in any moralistic way. I would say you may regret it, and you won't reverse this. You'll never forget it. Sorry.
Okay, Freddie, thank you. Mike?
I'm on the same lines with Freddie on this. LGBT, I would stand shoulder to shoulder with the people in Birmingham. I've got an 8-year-old grandson. I don't want him to know about this. Later in life, if he wants to learn about it, then he's an adult, then he can do. I don't see anything wrong with somebody that's gay. That don't bother me. I ain't bothered. I'm not gay. I ain't bothered. If you're gay, you're gay. Fair enough. I don't have a problem with it. It's not a big issue to me. What else have we got? Abortion. My first wife, we lost a child. It was aborted because she'd caught rubella. That never left us. Yeah, so it's not an easy issue. It's always been a policy of UKIP. It's a moral issue, and it's down to the woman. It's her decision. A woman's body belongs to the woman. It's her decision whether she has an abortion or
That's
not mine. Well, that's
not the policy of
that was our policy. It's always been a policy. If it's changed lately with Gerard, then it's been done as he micromanages everything. It's always been. Well, that is it. You're asking me. I'm not asking you. So that is a policy on that. As for grooming gangs, I've already said this week. Anybody that's out there grooming children, sodomising children, we should chuck them in a big dark hole and throw away the key. These people are paedophiles. Don't ever tell me that these people are doing this because of some religious book or because their big fella up there has told them to do it. They're doing this because they get sexual pleasure out of it. They are paedophiles. They are filth. Chuck them in a big hole. Forget about them. Get rid of them. And if the local councils, local police, and the politicians in the town are not doing anything about it, then as politicians we should be out there making sure that they do tackle this, as happened in Rotherham. We've just lost 12 councillors in Rotherham, 17 across the country, and more councillors will follow unless we get our act together. Those 12 councillors worked very, very hard with the Muslim community, with the police, to bring about convictions. Nobody knows about this because nobody was bothered in UKIP, because we was all standing outside of Westminster Court. But these people was doing their jobs as councillors, working very hard within the community and getting convictions. That is the way you tackle this thing. Getting in there and making sure these despicable people that groom our kids, sodomise them, are thrown in a big dark hole. That is what we do as politicians, and that's what this party will do. And the rest of it, we need to get back onto proper policies and start winning seats again.
Thanks for your question, Raymond. It was it's a complicated set of issues. You asked first of all about the family spokesman in UKIP, and I think that is a good thing that we have had a family spokesman recently. Now, support for the family was made a special interest group in UKIP again. I advocated that on the NEC. I wasn't the only one who pushed for that, but it became a special interest group. And yes, I saw the questionnaire that was sent to the candidates for Mike Gascoigne, so I'll have a word with Ben. He's probably overlooked it because of the punishing schedule of the hustings, so I will remind him to complete that, because we do need to know where people stand on these issues, and they are very fundamental issues. I have to try to reflect Ben's views on this, and he one issue that he has raised that has come up recently is the parental rights of rapists, which is a strange situation that we've got into, whereby with the very odd human rights laws that we now pursue in the UK, rapists who father children are given rights to access their children, which is a very bizarre circumstance. So Ben has talked about this, and he's very keen to revoke the parental rights of rapists. So I think that is moving slightly away from the religious slant of the Islamic grooming gangs. Well, rights of rapists should be revoked, whether they're Muslims, Christians, or wherever the hell they are. Obviously, rapists don't really have any or shouldn't have any rights to see their kids, and this is becoming a problem for the mothers and the kids themselves. So that's one thing he has said. Now, on the other issues, family values have to be taken into account, and they should be prioritised by UKIP. And we will probably be the only party that will be pursuing them, because the Conservatives have abandoned social conservative values. So I can see where your questions are coming from, but the specifics of these questions are such that we have to actually have a balanced view on a lot of these issues. Now, the abortion issue in Northern Ireland is very interesting because it touches on many different things. In UKIP, we seem to be going along a line whereby we want to be integrationist and we want to be part of the UK, and we want to say that Northern Ireland wants to be treated exactly not exactly the same, but broadly the same as the rest of the UK. So if we then go into a situation where we have different laws on abortion, that is counter to the idea of being an integrationist party and wanting everything to be the same throughout the UK. And there are certain legal difficulties with having abortion laws that are different in different parts of the UK. So that is the contradiction, and politics often throws up these contradictions. The abortion laws may well have been too liberal in mainland UK GB when they came in 1967. Before that, abortion was illegal, and it wasn't a very good situation. We had backstreet abortions, we had women dying from botched abortions and things like that. I think that the legalisation of abortion in its concept was possibly a better outcome, but the abortion laws were probably far too liberal. And I think, as Freddie has said, all abortions are a tragedy to some extent. Now, Jeremy Hunt, in the Conservative leadership contest, raised the issue that they may need to review the abortion laws in mainland GB. Perhaps we may eventually have a balanced position whereby we say, well, Northern Ireland shouldn't have separate treatment, especially as people can simply go to Manchester and get an abortion there. But perhaps reviewing the laws in Northern Ireland might be accompanied by reviewing the laws in the UK and seeing if there may be an appetite for tightening the law in the UK. So perhaps we could do that. But the point that Ben likes to make is that we need to do these things through consultation, through having policy groups, and through calmly and rationally looking at these issues and seeing what might benefit us electorally in the long run. Now, the issue of the LGBT stuff that's been going on, this is something that I'm very interested in. I was banned from the Welsh Assembly for speaking out against so-called transgender rights, and I can't really bring myself into this too much because I'm not the candidate, obviously. But this was a big issue in Peru, and which is a Roman Catholic country. They had a big issue with protests at school gates, and it became a big national issue. And I think that this is an area where a lot of parents are going to be concerned about kids of primary school age being indoctrinated with all of this politically correct hokum, which is all it is. And it's actually resulting in child abuse with kids who may simply be going through phases being told that, oh, you're transgender, and they end up having to go through surgery and things like this. A lot of this ends up with suicide, mental health problems. This is a massive issue. We do have to make a stand against this, and I think that we should adopt the slogan of let kids be kids, and let's not push this stuff in front of everyone.
We had a conference on this in London not many weeks ago.
We need to incorporate this into UKIP thinking, but although support for the family is a very good pressure group within UKIP, it can't be allowed to dictate the policy. It should feed into the policy, but we need to think as a whole on where we're going to go with this. But thank you very much for raising those issues.
Catherine?
Yeah, the 2018 manifesto actually has a policy specifically relating to animal welfare and the abolition of non-stun slaughter in the United Kingdom. How passionate are the candidates about that, and what would they do to oversee that coming to fruition?
There's a petition on the go about that too at the minute.
I'll take it if I can. I spearheaded the group, which took on 8 vested interests within UKIP, all who argued that we should continue torturing animals in the 21st century, which I consider completely wrong. I answered them rationally. 3 or 4 of them, one was a Jewish rabbi, Shneur Odze, who took a view that I was therefore banning Jews from the UK, at least on Passover night. I proved this was not the case, simply because I know the requirements. We could have brought in freshly slaughtered lamb killed outside the UK in accordance with specific Jewish requirements. The old requirements that it had to be at the door of the house were removed when the Jews left Egypt. So it has to be on the steps of the tabernacle. And the tabernacle is somewhere else, not in the UK. The lambs are slaughtered. They are brought in refrigerated trucks, not frozen, straight into the UK and then flown out from London. And they'll have 3 or 4 hours to eat them. Not that I've ever met a sincere Jewish believer who actually stopped eating the lamb after the Passover lamb at sunrise the next morning. This is Nisan 1415 in the Jewish calendar. I do know a great deal about this. As to all other nights for Jews and all days and nights for Muslims, there is no requirement whatsoever for them to not eat frozen material, or indeed to be vegetarian, or to be any of the other options, or to use some other foods. So it is only specifically Jews for this night. I argued with representatives of William Dartmouth, an MEP of ours at that time, various farming interests, including Stuart Agnew and his ones, indeed with Pat Bryant briefly. And generally it was thought that I prevailed, that this is a good policy. It has 80% approval from the public, that we should not be torturing animals. If you want to really see how bad it is, go to YouTube and see the one where they have the cow turning over. She's crying and crying out for help, and we are sitting there and allowing this to happen. It's a real shame. We are not, I am a pet lover, and I feel very, very strongly about this. Tears are not far from me right now, and of frustration that it has actually come to this matter. However, this policy was strongly backed by Gerard. Gerard Batten did back it, but unfortunately then this Tommy business started and everything else went out the window. This is all the events I've told you about were 1 year ago. I spearheaded because I was going to take them on religious grounds. And Muslims saying it's anti-Muslim is ridiculous. There is nothing in the Quran or Hadith which says Muslims have to eat meat at all. There's nothing to stop them eating refrigerated meat or frozen meat which has been killed abroad. So this isn't, there were also moves that we shouldn't even allow imported meat. But I think politics is a matter of balance. Let those countries make those decisions. We shouldn't go that far. So yes, I did compromise. I'm just saying if they have to torture animals to kill them, not here and not in my name. And we should have nothing to do with it. This is inhumane and barbarous. We are a nation of pet lovers and cat lovers and dog lovers, and they're no different. Please, sir.
Sorry, just to add on that. One of the things I've found quite common is you hear about people saying Tesco's and some of the big retailers are switching to all halal food.
Yeah,
schools. Choice. I find it deplorable.
Oh, we should have compulsory labelling, that's for sure, but do people read the labels? I'm not sure it works. I think the public perception of how bad this is, but if it's only frozen goods which have been brought in from outside, and they are clearly labelled, I think right now it's too far. I've also heard the argument by people opposing this, and within UKIP, that this would lead to cattle rustling, that they would simply, or lamb rustling, they would simply take it and steal it, and so on. But that may be true, but that's not beyond the wit of man to stop rustling being the reason for continuing to torture animals, simply because farmers would have the sheep, the lambs, the cows taken away. I have seen videos taken in the place where I rule UKIP, very democratically, the Republic of Londonistan, and I've seen ones where they're actually openly doing it in their back gardens, actually dismembering, murdering a cow, who is screaming for help that doesn't come, and then dismembering the corpse in the back garden of their council property. Somebody videoed it. It's shameful and shocking, shouldn't be allowed.
A friend lives in Tooting, and
Tooting.
he can't get an English butcher's. You know, he can't get halal-free meat.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
You know,
It's the other's turn. I'm sure none of us want to torture animals.
We have this issue in Cardiff as well as London, because I think the reality is in towns and cities where there is a large Muslim population, there is this creeping move towards halal meat, and people are eating halal meat without realising they're eating halal meat. You can go to restaurants and you have to look very closely on the menu to discover that actually what they're serving in many cases is halal meat. And the labelling, yes, you can label things, but let's say you go to a supermarket, there are so many different labels now, it becomes rather problematic. So we have to stop this move towards more and more provision of halal meat to benefit a minority group in Britain, which is basically Muslims who want to eat halal meat. Now we have to remember what the law states on this. There is only a provision to allow the slaughter of animals in the halal fashion for religious reasons. So it's actually illegal for outlets to feed non-Muslims with halal meat. And this seems to not be being observed. And I've raised this issue in the Welsh Assembly.
That deserves to be raised.
It did deserve to be raised, but of course it was treated with contempt by the left, and it was treated by some people as being some kind of anti-Muslim rhetoric. Well, the Muslims are free to eat halal meat. They can eat halal meat, but why the heck should we be forced to eat halal meat, often without realising it, because it's simpler for providers to give us halal meat. Now, West Lancashire County Council took a stand on this, and they banned halal meat in the schools. because the danger is that in areas where there's a lot of Muslims, they will start actually providing halal meat to schools, and Christian school kids will end up eating halal meat without even realising this. I think it's a massive issue. There is also a growing demand for halal meat from the Middle East, particularly Saudi Arabia, and there is a danger that after we leave the EU, we will have a growing market for actually exporting halal meat to Saudi Arabia. We need to make sure this doesn't happen. So we need to focus on animal rights, which will resonate with the British public, and this will distinguish us from the other parties.
Yeah.
So we have to do this. We also need to look at provision of CCTVs in abattoirs to make sure that animals aren't being mistreated. And we have to be very careful in trade treaties with other countries, because if we have a trade treaty with America, the USA have much worse animal welfare provisions than we do in the UK. So we can't allow animal welfare to be driven down as a result of any trade treaty with the USA or any other country.
Well, Garrett's covered it very well. All loves a Robin Murray, because you're eating halal. If you go into there, it should be labelled. And if it's just on the thing itself and nobody's reading it, well, let's have a bigger sign on there. This is, it's abhorrent in this day and age, and it's not just halal, it's kosher. I'd ban it. I'd just say that's it. In this day and age, we cannot hang an animal up by its back legs, whisper some mumbo jumbo, and then slit its throat. It's abhorrent. It shouldn't be allowed. It should be stopped immediately. And as I say, it is in schools. We don't know what's happening, but it's definitely going into schools, and it's in supermarkets, and it's got to be stopped. And if the people, the Jews and the Muslims get upset, well, so be it. But we shouldn't be eating this stuff, and we shouldn't be slaughtering our animals in this way. It's it's abhorrent. It is as I think it's Freddie said, these animals are screaming out. Go to an abattoir and watch them doing it. They're screaming out. It's terrible. It gives you nightmares. You wouldn't want to do it. So, yeah, just ban it. Just stop it altogether and say we're not having it.
Thank you.
Okay, Keith, and then Alan, and then Valley.
Veterans. There's about. I'm a veteran. I know Mike's a veteran. There's about 4.5 million of us. The last count in the United Kingdom as a whole. Most of them are politically disenfranchised. They can't find a political home, particularly with the way they've been treated over the last couple of decades, and that's come to a head recently with the treatment of soldiers who served in Northern Ireland. A lot of these groups who I keep in contact with, I was until recently the UKIP spokesperson for veterans and the leader of the UKIP veterans group. A lot of these groups don't want anything to do with us or with any other political party because they painted us all with the same brush. They all saw us as the enemy. What would you as leadership candidates do to reach out to that 4.5 million people who are desperately looking for a political home?
Okay, we'll start with Gareth this time.
Thanks, Robert, and thanks, Keith, for your question. You were part of the veterans group that you wanted special interest group status within UKIP. Casting my mind back to the NEC meeting, I believe Mike, who was involved with you, proposed that you should be a special interest group, and I think I seconded the motion. So UKIP is mindful of the needs of veterans, and they are mentioned in the interim manifesto. I think this is a very live issue. A lot of veterans suffer problems when they leave the forces, although of course we shouldn't characterise all veterans as suffering from these kind of problems. But there are real issues over housing. There are issues over the need for counselling in many cases because of PTSD and things like this. There is a massive neglect of veterans by UK governments over the years, and this needs to be addressed. And I think that UKIP is probably the only party that is going to address the rights of veterans, so it is a very big issue. I think we can put as a policy the need to prioritise veterans in the field of housing. There is also the issue of provision of jobs, and to be fair, the interim manifesto has gone in this direction with things like the border security forces, and there are other jobs that may well complement a career in the armed forces, like the prison service and things like this. And I think that these are things that we need to investigate. We need, what we actually need, and this is where Ben is very interested in this, he wants to develop policy groups. So a policy group in this area is very much needed, and it should interact with the special interest group, and therefore we can develop a policy team, and we can look at these issues, and we can deal with the people who have specialist knowledge in this area, and we can come up with policies that will resonate with that section of the electorate that you're talking about, the veterans. Ben is himself ex-Navy, so he's very interested in developing this.
Well, I wrote the policy from 2015 onwards on veterans, specifically the military covenant. The military covenant says that we should, or the council should give priority to veterans. What I want, is that word changing. I want that word changing to must. Must give. That's what it should be, must, not should, must. Because lots of councils just ignore it, totally ignore it. There's lots of issues with veterans, and yeah, there's a PTSD. Well, you know, tonight 9,000 veterans will be homeless. Now that means on the streets, but also sofa surfing, as the sofa said, you know, because their marriages are broken up, they've had problems and they're homeless, and that's a terrible state of affairs in Great Britain today. I spent 3 nights on the streets of London, Manchester and Leeds looking at this problem and seeing veterans that are out there. One guy in London, ex-Boaty, ex-Royal Marine, shrapnel up the backs of his legs in an elevator state. He was self-medicating on strong alcohol. Bad state. That guy, we had a guy with us, Dave Woods, who ran a Veterans Association, and he actually helped him and get off the streets. But there's lots of issues there, and as Kate said, there's probably 4 to 5 million people out there, veterans and veterans' families, votes that we could gain. And I think we, as UKIP in the veterans community, have got a very, very good name. I've spoken in London, Leeds, York on these issues many times to the veterans, to street rallies with the veterans, and they know that they can trust me, they know who I am, and they asked me. I should have spoke actually. I think it was last Saturday in Newcastle, but I was at a conference. Well, it was one of these hustings, so I couldn't go. But so they do ring me up to go speak because they know they can trust me. And they see UKIP as a party that they can trust and they will speak to. So we've got to garner that. We've got to get into there. And it's a big issue. It's a big issue, and it's been ignored by consecutive governments. They've just totally ignored it. They go out there and fight on behalf of the country. They get discharged, and they're just forgotten about. And the Northern Ireland veterans, it's an absolute disgrace. The Good Friday Agreement allowed terrorists to walk free. Well, there's got to be reciprocal rights. If we want peace, and we're saying we're offering the olive branch and saying, well, we'll let you out because we want peace. But you can't then go and arrest some 70-year-old guy that was sent to Ireland years ago, 40, 50 years ago, and arrest him for something you're thinking, yeah, I remember it that morning. Yeah, I vaguely remember. And they're going to do him for something then, manslaughter, murder, whatever. That's just not right. That's not right. So, we need to get out there and we need to campaign and get those votes from those veterans and even some of the serving soldiers see as a party that they can come to. And we need really to get out there. And I've done my bit out there. And I'll just tell you one story. When I went to York, I spoke at York, and I just bimbled down the street, and there's hundreds of coppers all over the place. And this inspector said to me, he said, "Oh, Mr. Hookham," and I went, "Yes." He said, "Oh, we're here because of you." So I said, "What are you on about?" So he said, "Well, there's a lot of demonstrators down here, and they're all come because of you, because you're a racist scum." He says, "Are you going to start any trouble?" And I said, "Well, look at me, do you think I'm..." He said, "No." I said, "Come on." So we marched down the street and there was all the Greens, the Lib Dems and all the trash. And they're all shouting racist scum, and all these old guys there, the Berries and the Smart, and they're all rows of medals out here. Racist scum, and they're all going. And that went viral. That did them more harm than it did the veterans, or than it did me. But this is how the Greens and Liberals and Labour and all, that's how they see the veterans, you know, because we need them when there's something to fight for, but once that fighting's over, we don't need you no more. These people give you the right to sleep in your bed safely, but once that's over with, they aren't interested. Well, we've got to be the party that says, well, we will look after you. We value your service. We value what you did to this country, or did for this country, and we value that, and we will make sure that you're at the front of the queue for any health issues that you have, front of the queue for housing, front of the queue for mental health, because I know one lad that was sat in the middle of the road waiting for a bus to run him over at 2 o'clock in the morning. And when they interviewed him, they said, you know, why didn't you ring somebody up? He said, because the office that they tell us to ring up, the army, give us a number if we've got a problem to ring up. It shuts at 5 o'clock. He says, I'm crawling up the wall at 2 in the morning. This thing's shut at 5 o'clock. So that's got to stop. We've got to give these boys, and it's a bit like America. America really look after their veterans. You know, they're really, I mean, they just see them as something completely different. They've saved their country, and we appreciate it. Well, that's a mentality that we should have. Yep. These people have served this country well, and we should appreciate that and say, thank you very much for your service. Thank you very much for putting your life on the line. We appreciate that. And we as a party should really be that party that pushes that forward and campaigns on that on behalf of these people, and make sure that they are appreciated.
This has made it so easy for me. I agree. It's an outrage. My close friend Pete Muswell knows you. He was the gentleman, for those of you who watched or came to London and the South East for the recent regional conference, joint one, you'd have seen somebody who proudly marched to the podium carrying our flag and so on. That was my friend Pete Muswell, a London chairman, branch chairman. Countries are judged, Churchill said, by how they treat people they have at their mercy. Our veterans are at the mercy of our country, and it's treating them awfully, and this is outrageous. If they ticked some box saying they're a refugee from God knows where it is land, they wouldn't be homeless at night. This is madness. We have a needs-based benefit system. Right, now you might say, so the veterans have needs, so why aren't they being met? But there's often psychological things. It may not be full-blown PTSD, but something else, which makes it harder for them to seek help, because they have been people who, they have pride. But the people who are taking the help are people who have no pride. They see us as just being mugs. They've got idiot written over here, and they come in and they're taking the services. And there's unlimited demand for these services. And if people are there who are being professionally trained, Mike has been to Calais and no doubt encountered them, the scoundrels there who are teaching our people, the immigrants, how to claim things better. And there's no one doing that for the soldiers. And this is a crying outrage. Shame on the people responsible. Shame on government for doing it. Shame on them being part of this for so long. We are the only country in the world which treats its own soldiers as pariahs, and this is nonsense. This is rooted in the self-loathing that the left and cultural Marxists have placed upon this country. We're guilty for about everything. We're guilty about things which were even our great-great-grandparents were not involved in at all. Yes, there was an empire a long time ago, but by and large it was the most benevolent empire in the world. I'm not defending empires, but look at what the Dutch did, and for God's sake, look at what the Belgians did, and the Belgians just did it 110 years ago, and much of it put Hitler to shame in what they did in the Belgian Congo, etc. But our own soldiers, who may have made a mistake or may not even have done anything, they're hauled before court by the likes of that. I'm being careful about libel here. His name begins with SH, and a certain firm of lawyers who've made fortunes out of this, getting cockamamie stories from toe rags and scoundrels who probably never anything happened to them, claiming they were tortured and this, that, and the other, and that's in the recent Iraq war. Shame on them, and shame on our government for turning their back to vulnerable people who need our help. They send the soldiers out without armor, they send our aircraft carriers out without planes, but they've always got money for one thing: foreign aid. Why are they doing this? The foreign aid isn't going to the people in need. They're going to corrupt individuals. Half of it is ending up in unnamed Swiss bank accounts or Luxembourg bank accounts, or the worst ones are Belgian ones, which are actually most protected by laws of privacy. We fund transgender girl bands in Nigeria. Now, I don't mind transgender anything's in anywhere else, but I don't want to be funding them. If they're any good, people want to listen to their music, they'll pay them. If they don't want to listen, they should shut up. Simple as that. But that is unfortunately what our money is used for. We are borrowing money from the countries, or from banks based in countries, to give those countries aid. I love many countries in the world, but I don't want us to be in a position where we are giving aid to the likes of China and Russia. That's current. We're still doing that. India is the well-known one. India's just going to put a second vehicle on the moon, and we are paying for it. We haven't put one yet. This is nuts. And when I tell people from those countries, from Russia, they just denied it. They said, it's false. It's not true. Then I proved it was true. They said, golly, well, I suppose if you lot are so stupid as to send it, why don't we take it? And in India, it was largely, we don't need it. It's demeaning for us. And I said, maybe demeaning for you. It's not demeaning for the politicians who managed to get it. So all of this is done while our veterans suffer. And this is complete outrage. Why are we not hitting on policies like this? For the gentleman who has left, he is unfortunately not here to defend his point of view, but he believes we should just go on about Tommy, banging on about Tommy. I think we should be going on banging about Tommies.
Amen.
Amen to that.
Okay, folks, I think we're rapidly running out of time, so I have two more people, and I think we'll have to call it a day then. So, Alan.
I'm trying to phrase this like a question, something I feel very strongly about. We want to get more regional input into UKIP. I would ask, Donald, have they considered how damaging it could be to make the NEC elected regionally, the elected members of the NEC? The NEC should be elected nationally. It should be represent members nationally on all sorts of issues. The issues we're discussing here tonight. There should be places, and we should be looking at that, and it has been discussed a bit tonight, where regions can be represented. Mike was talking about regional chairman meeting, regional organisers meeting, not talking to each other. There should be a briefing, a brief for those people to actually have objectives to represent their regions in that. I'm very concerned that if we elect the NEC regionally, we will be precluding what a lot of people are talking about, a party of all the talents, where I joke sometimes that there's no reason why there shouldn't be 12 Ulstermen on the elected to the NEC. Very costly in airfares, but I'd just like to hear opinions on that.
The idea I'm putting forward, which I've fought for over 10 years, regional representation, is because for years the South East and South West have put people on the NEC.
London.
You'll never ever get anybody into the NEC the way the system runs now.
I've come close.
Because you're not strong enough. This is the argument that was given to me. Why should we put somebody from Northern Ireland on the NEC when all of the members are in the South East and South West? And I said it's not about that. It's about information. It's about getting the information out to the membership, and getting the membership then to send up their information to the leader and everything and his body. It's about information, spreading that information about. It's been for too long London-centric, South-centric NEC. Nobody up north.
There's the map.
Well, yeah, it's all round here. It's all round there. That's how it's been for many, many years, and I've not listened to people up here. Yorkshire, North Lincolnshire was one of the strongest regions. It's been decimated just recently, but it's one of the strongest regions. We could never ever get anybody onto the NEC, so it was all down south. And what I want to do is I want to spread that. I want to spread it up there so that you've got something, we've got it. Everybody has got, even Scotland, up there in Scotland, have got a representation on the NEC. We've got Donald McIntyre at the moment, and I don't know how the hell he got onto it, but he did. He must have done, but it's been a difficult time to get him on there. It's took years and years and years. My point is, we need regional representation so that the people all around the country have a voice within the party, so that they know, they can tell the leader what is going on and what they want from the party. And the only way you're going to do that is regional representation. It's about information. It's about spreading that information and getting your voice out there. And you know, I passionately believe on this. I've been fighting for this for many, many years, and it will happen. Under me as a leader, it will happen. The membership will have a voice.
Let's have.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know that you were going to the toilet.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I wasn't going to the toilet, I promise you. Right, it's quite simple, firstly. There's elements of truth, and there's something not quite right, because you're given a list of up to 94 people on the NEC, and who the hell do you vote for? You don't know any of them personally. This is part of it, and we end up with people who are not representing you. At best, the NEC acts like a jury, randomly selected. And juries sometimes do odd things, which you don't disagree with. But when they got rid of Bolton, you pretty much agreed. And when they got rid of Gerard in some form, didn't get rid of him from the party, but then you don't like it. Unfortunately, those decisions are what you get with juries. Now, the actual analytical problem, because I've done all the emotional bits, which is the real me, but let me show you a bit of maths. Now, I'm amazed this is not mentioned. Most of the membership of UKIP is here. That's why you get people returned from here. If you put the centroid, the balancing point for the map, weighted by membership, it's somewhere here in Watford. That's why you're getting people to the south, because the biggest regions are southeastern and eastern, followed by southwest. That's why you're getting it, nothing else. But currently there is an issue as well, so I go for a middle solution, a mixed solution, where you will get some regional representation on an NEC, on a jury like NEC. But the other thing is, understand the reasons for regions. I was going to say regions for reasons. And that is the EU learnt, divide and rule. They made all these things up to divide Britain and stop Britain being a nation and thinking like a nation together. The regions have no other particular sense, and they're not equal in population. I believe I'm a representative of the largest region, which is London, because there are 2 or 3 million people living there who shouldn't be in the country at all, and they're in London. And London is actually the biggest, closely followed by the southeast. Technically, the southeast supposedly has a few more people living in it than we do. But there are other regions where there's less than a third of the population of, say, London or the southeast. Now, population-wise and UKIP membership-wise, these regions aren't equal. So that's why just doing it on this basis isn't enough. I want to look for people on basis of talent and ability. It doesn't matter where they come from. I couldn't care less whether you're pink, brown or yellow with big spots on it. I couldn't care less whether you're male, female or any of the alleged 42 versions in between. I really couldn't care less. When I'm asked about questions like this about homosexuality, I joke, I'm warning it's a joke and I hope you're not recording this, that I'd make being homosexual compulsory for all other men. For 3 years, it reduced the competition for ugly buggers like me. But except I'm not allowed to say that, so I didn't. So there you go. So we are allowed to make jokes. We don't go to jail for making jokes. You want a leader who is able to lead and take these things on. Freedom of speech is extremely precious to me, and I would never squander it. Now, here we have a real issue. I would have said have an NEC which is partly elected this way, but do something to discourage there being 94 candidates up there. You can't possibly read it. People were doing it on the basis of their looks.
Agree.
Therefore, you got a random selection of people. If you're doing it on basis of talent, and where you're making an informed decision, at least part of this election may be done on a regional basis. I commend to you the system used for the Welsh Assembly and for the London Assembly in their elections, where you have partly representatives and partly from a list. And it's not beyond the wit of man to do so. Look up the Welsh Assembly, look up the London Assembly, and see how those elections are run. And there is a mixture of national, putting it into a national context, and regional. So there are 2 lists, but they all get onto the NEC together and they act. This is all very boring admin, but it would get round the position right now. There have been some people who got on the onto the NEC, who it was staggering to me they got in, because I knew where the bodies were buried. These were people from my region, which is overrepresented, which is London. London has a lot of the talent, but also a lot of the rogues, and that is simply the nature. of it. And you often get the two things together. I'm being very frank with you. Sorry.
I won't labour all these points. Yeah, Alan, you make a good point. There are potential problems with having a regional NEC, and we need to look at this carefully. But the main thing is the constitution would have to be changed to allow for it. So it would have to go through at an EGM or something like that. So I think we maybe need to take a year to think about what changes we want to have in the party, or what potential changes, and then we could perhaps have a conference combined with an EGM, not this year, but maybe next year, or maybe in 2 years' time, and we could get rid of some of the rather unwieldy aspects of UKIP's constitution. But you're right in saying there are potential pitfalls with going towards a regionalised NEC. However, at the moment, Northern Ireland, for instance, isn't represented in an NEC meeting. Now, I looked around the room at an NEC meeting a few months ago, and I noticed that there were most of the 12 regions of the UK, most of the regions of the UK were represented at that meeting. They weren't all elected members. For instance, the West Midlands didn't have a member, but Paul Williams was the party director. He was from the West Midlands. And there were a couple of other instances like that, but there was nobody from the North East of England, and there was nobody from Northern Ireland. I think they were the two regions that weren't represented in the room, and I think it's not very good to have regions that aren't represented in an NEC meeting. So I think that we could look at things, and Ben has thought about this as well. We have discussed the NEC. Now Ben is very keen on having a democratic element to the party, and he stressed the need for an NEC, but he does recognise that the NEC could be reformed. Of course, he's a member of the NEC, and he stood on a platform that the NEC should work better. So he wasn't someone who thought the NEC was brilliant, but he's understood since his year on the NEC that it serves a massively useful purpose in that it is the elected element of the party. The Brexit Party is a Nigel Farage personality cult. It doesn't have any elected element to it. Farage can decide to do what he wants. So we have to be a democratic party. We have to have an NEC, but the region should be represented. You could actually, thinking about it, move to an 18-member elected NEC, and you could have 2 members from the more populated regions as far as membership goes. Freddie was saying that most of the members are from here and here, and then the outlying areas where there are not so many members, they could have 1 member as well. But at least then people would know who their NEC representative was. At the moment, it's ridiculous. People are just voting for people on the NEC on the basis of a photo and a couple of hundred words. And the reason Donald Mackay was elected to the NEC was because he said Scotland doesn't have a member, and he got elected. He's a very good member of the NEC, but it was only purely on the basis that he was Scottish that he was elected. That shows there is a real appetite in UKIP for people to represent regions on the NEC, but we need to move democratically and discuss it before we move. So you're right to raise the pitfalls of it.
This is a big thing for me, because I've been fighting so long for it. As has been said, you elect your NEC member by a photograph that's probably 30 years old and when he got married. And 250, and I've read these things, and I go, I know this guy, that don't bear no resemblance whatsoever. So what I would make these people do, they want to represent you in that region, then they should get out to every branch meeting and say, I want to be your representative. So you've actually seen the guy or the woman, and you know what they're talking, and you can ask them questions, what are you going to do for me? So you can ask them. So that they're going there representing you, and you actually know who they are. Because that's the way we've got to do it. And we've got to change. And the NEC members that are on there at the moment, the majority of them have all got elected because they've all said they want constitutional change. So it should be quite easy to say, right, well, we're going to change. And I wouldn't wait 2 years. I'd make this conference in Newport this year an EGM. And I'd push it forward then. And I'd say, we need to change. This party's got to change. And it's got to change sooner rather than later. We are dying. We've got to change. So do it now. Don't wait 2 years. Do it now.
Very short one sentence.
Well, let's just, right, go ahead, Will.
Just come back to it. Yeah, I stood for the NEC 3 times. Twice I did abysmally. The third time, which was the big field of 90, I got 7 times the vote of the membership in Northern Ireland. you know, so, and I was based here to run around Bournemouth for a couple of days, but, you know, so it is possible. And, you know, so I'll not go over the arguments again, but...
But you deserve representation. This Northern Ireland deserves representation. So you should be on it. You should be on there.
Well, we deserve it, but we should...
But the good leader will represent all the regions anyway
Well, it doesn't
himself to
matter,
fight
no,
for your side.
No, it doesn't.
Right, folks. We are rapidly running out of time, and I've run out of alcohol. So I think Vinny has a quick question, and then we'll have to call.
Right. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for coming here, and made a very interesting night for me. Craig actually asked my question, so I just leave it with this here. I'm a vet, and I was often left in the brown sticky stuff, you know, by those that suppose to know better. When your back's against the wall like mine was, what are you going to do? Because you kept backs at the wall.
We fight. We go on fighting. We fight and we fight and we fight. We fight even if we think we're losing, because we are setting an example to others who will then carry on the fight. If we don't fight, if we stand down, or that crazy knuckle policy of stand aside, then we're just forgotten. We're casting ourselves into the dustbin of history. We're not. We won that. We won the right to have the referendum. We won the referendum. We are a great party and we'll be great again. We've gone down the wrong path for silly reasons, not because people were evil or bad. They were misguided and they wouldn't listen to wise counsel given by all of us and others. They just wouldn't listen. And when somebody doesn't listen to me, they know they're blooming well not listening, because I shout if necessary, but I wasn't listened to. But we are a great party filled with great people, and that's what we do. We fight.
You've asked that question, and I think it's answered by all of the candidates that's standing in this election, because the last 10 days has been horrendous. It's been absolutely horrendous, because the way it was planned, he was in Birmingham one day, he was in Glasgow another day, he was in Newcastle, he was out there, and it's just been horrendous. So none of us would be doing this if we didn't believe in the party, and we didn't want the party to go forward. It's just different directions. I want it to change. I want it to change direction. I want it to be an electoral threat once again. Richard wants it to go the same old way and carry on doing what it was doing, because he thinks it's been a huge success the last 18 months. Well, it hasn't. So we've got to change. But every candidate is doing this because we want to fight and save this party.
Yeah, but Ben did all the other hustings apart from this one. So
No.
didn't he do it?
No, Ben's done about half of them, but Ben has had a child recently,
Yeah, she
so
did.
it's
Okay,
not.
She was
okay.
hanging on.
I'm the only one who's done all the hustings.
We was all hanging on with.
Doesn't
Ben.
matter. We're not counting.
Let me rephrase that. It's been a punishing schedule. I wasn't involved in it, but I was a candidate at the start, and when I saw the schedule, me and a couple of the guys who worked for me, we actually drew the map of the UK, and we were trying to work out the schedule, and it was the second week was ridiculous. It was up and down. The guy that devised the schedule for the hustings, he seemed to have an idea that the dates shouldn't clash with one another, which was very good, but he didn't seem to have any idea that Birmingham is nowhere near Glasgow and Norwich isn't particularly close to Plymouth. So I do applaud these guys who've been going to the hustings. Now, Christ, I forgot the bloody question now.
Here's the schedule for everybody.
Forget this question. We need to fight. Ben is an ex-serviceman. He was in the Navy and he served in Afghanistan. He will fight. Now, an interesting point he made is he stood in 2017. He eventually withdrew his name, but many of the candidates in 2017 have buggered off. They're not even in the party anymore. He isn't going anywhere. He is here for the long fight, and that's a point that he has made. So I would like to point out that he feels his home is in UKIP. It isn't anywhere else. He doesn't feel any other party represents him, and he wants UKIP to be a fighting force again. And that's the only political party that he thinks represents him. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. If UKIP did go to the wall, where else would we go? I wouldn't have anywhere else to go, and Ben wouldn't have anywhere else to go, and many other people would be in the same boat. So the answer, Vinny, is we fight.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, folks. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. But
Closing speeches.
yeah, but you will have a chance to speak to the candidates, I'm sure, in the bar afterwards.
Ryan?
Well, you never know. So I'm going to let them finish with just a couple of minutes closing remarks each, and then we'll finish up.
You go first. Go first.
Oh,
no.
go ahead.
As soon as I finish, can I go to the bar?
Are you banned?
Can I go second?
Right. You've had a lot of questions, a lot of answers tonight, and just reiterating where I want to be. I want this party to be an electoral threat. I want this party to change direction. I want it to be out there on the street, asking the questions and listening to the answers from the people on the street. This is a party that should be directed directly at the Labour vote. The Labour vote is where we should be, and I think we can scope that up. Me, as a leader, I would totally change the party, the constitution, the NEC, which we've already talked about, bring in forum for policy and get the skills within the party, which has been ignored for many, many years, bring those skills out and bring the spokesmen out and people that's actually worked in the areas that they're going to be speaking about. You know, they've had real life experience, and there's lots of experience out there. So we need to do that. Vote for me, vote for change, changing direction, changing the headshed, and really get out there and making sure that this is an electoral threat where we can actually go out and win votes. Freddie, be quick.
It's Gareth's turn. He wants to go to the bar.
Ben is a reasonable guy. He works well in committees, and he wants to be a collegiate leader. He wants to utilise all the talents that we've got. He wants to empower the branches. He's very much the candidate of the grassroots. He wants people from the grassroots to tell us what their abilities are. He wants to form policy groups and things like that. The policy areas he's very interested in: defence, law and order, which we haven't talked about much tonight, and the NHS. And he's very interested in the live manifesto, so everyone can see where the policy has come from and everyone can have an input into where the policy is going. And he wants a policy unit as well. He wants to professionalise the party. Of course, he hasn't been here tonight, so please go on the internet, look at the other hustings and look at what he's like as a speaker and how he articulates his own ideas. I'm a poor substitute, but it's been a very interesting night, I would say, and thanks to everyone for coming, and thanks to Robert and Paul for organising it. And I hope that we have a viable party at the end of all this, and we have a leader who can bring everyone together. Ben can certainly do that. But of course, the party is not about one person. Vote for who you think is the best person to lead this party, but make sure that the party can move forward together as a collegiate party afterwards. And please don't leave us with a leader where we're all buggered and we can't work with him and we've got nothing left.
Being difficult. I disagree. You need a person, this is a false dichotomy. You need somebody who is both a leader who will lead and somebody who will be collegiate. And the two don't rule each other out at all. Please give me a chance, because I will be that leader. While I have this well-known analytical approach, which then turns to emotional, my own daughter, when she used to ask me as a young lady, a very young lady, what's really important, Daddy? And she's talking to a physicist who's a mathematician as well, done lots of things with numbers and running businesses and blah, 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 blah. And I told her the most important things in life are all the things which you can't measure, which you can only feel. And that's what's important. And with me as a leader, that's what you'll get. And God help the enemy if they really, really try to take us on. Because I'll win. And I'll win for you. And I'll win for Britain. I shouldn't choose these words, and I do know them by heart, but just in case I make some mistake, I will look at these again. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air war. That's with the media. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost. We shall fight them on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and on the streets. We shall fight in the hills, and we shall never surrender. Yeah. That's what you'll get with me as leader. God help them.
thank you to us all for coming. You know, we are a small part of the party here in Northern Ireland. We really appreciate you taking the time to come over here and talk to us and answer our questions. I think Paul will just close up proceedings.
Yes, just very briefly.
Thank you.
Echo
Thank you.
Robert's comments. Absolutely ridiculous indeed for three candidates for their attendance this evening, and yes, a round of applause is well earned. And dare I say, those pints, you certainly have earned those too. So, but thanks again to yourselves for turning out in such numbers. It really heartens me. I'm so buoyed to see you sacrificing a Friday night to be here, and I think that's a measure of commitment, which is matched in equal measure by these three gentlemen. And I think delivered a bravura performance tonight, and for that we thank you.
Thank you for coming.